When we think about bartending, it isn't just about making drinks. I'll tell you tomorrow when I figure it out.
This week we have Mr. Chris Tunstal.
I started my bartending career as a craft dealer in Vegas.
You were a craft dealer?
I was, for many years.
Chris is a longtime bartender, mixologist, business owner, and the founder of A Bar Above. You could correct me if you don't agree with me. The quality of service in a lot of restaurants have gone down, in my opinion.
And especially post-COVID. Hospitality got pretty beat up.
How do you feel about social media bartending?
I welcome it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
The more people that get in the space, the better.
You kind of hit every spot of the industry, dude.
I've been around. I've been doing a
insane.
lot of stuff.
So we got a Matador over here.
Love it.
Let's see if you could guess what's in it. Welcome back to the Nate Biltz podcast, where it's my goal to interview world-class creatives in entertainment, business, fitness, and art to inspire and educate you to get better and chase your curiosities. And this episode is brought to you by INSPIRIT Bitters. Be your own bartender at home and make yourself an old-fashioned, Manhattan, hot toddy, spicy margarita, and much more with your INSPIRIT Bitters. They have various flavor profiles ranging from holiday spiced to pineapple habanero. Just go to www.inspiritbitters.com and use code NBP for Nate Biltz Podcast for 15% off your next order. Also, are you a lover of cocktails? Or a career or part-time bartender? If so, mix like a pro with A Bar Above. A Bar Above has the best mixing tools on the market. From shakers and strainers to mallets and ice picks, A Bar Above has you covered with all your cocktail needs. Use code BILTZ for 10% off today. Before we get started, if you could do me one favor, if you have received any value out of this podcast, please take the time to like and subscribe to the show. My goal is to keep growing this podcast and bring you the most creative and talented humans in the world. Taking the time to like, subscribe, and comment allows me just to do that. There's this one guy who I listen to a lot online, and he talked about business all the time. And he always is like, if I'm going to try something, I'm going to give myself 10 years to do it.
Sure.
And if I really enjoy it, and then if it fails, cool. Like, on to the next. But it's hard to be bad at that for that long if you're going to do it for 10 years.
Right.
Like, you have to get good at it.
You do. And growth happens in multiple stages, right? So where you start to where you end is you're going to go through a lot of different phases of growth because you need to prioritize different things at every growth level, right? So you just can't be gung-ho 100%, operating. If you're talking about the world of business, you can't be operating like you're a $10 million company when you have $1 million in sales.
Sure.
Right? So you need to start to evolve and make really kind of hard decisions along the way to get to that point.
What was like the growth for A Bar Above?
So the growth
I guess like the growth sections, how you said there's different areas of growth.
So I think with us, a lot of it was done retrospectively. It wasn't done like with a lot of thought. We've evolved a lot. So the company exists, and the major shareholders are me and my wife. So we're completely self-funded.
That's awesome.
So that's a whole different conversation about
beautiful.
Like money and capital and
cheers,
cash
brother.
flow. Yep.
So we got a Matador over here.
Love it.
Let's see if you could guess what's in it.
Tequila, agave spirit of some form.
Okay.
Orange, probably.
There's some orange bitters in there.
Definitely got that spice in there, man.
The spice is the pineapple habanero.
It's sick.
There's a quarter ounce in there of the pineapple habanero bitters. There's a kick to it, and usually it's rounded off with some dry vermouth, but I ran out, so there's a little A's in there.
The orange. Yep, absolutely. And it's got a nice weight to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really yummy, man.
Yeah,
that's
and it's
cool.
clear too. It's a cool little color.
Yeah, love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have you had any sleep problems or snoring problems? If so, hostage tape could be your answer. Mouth taping and only nasal breathing has shown to prevent snoring and offset sleep apnea. It brings more oxygen to the brain, gives more aesthetically pleasing cranial facial features, and improves your overall cardiovascular health. Give it a try at www.hostagetape.com and use code NATE49486 for 10% off. So back to A Bar Above, the growth, different growth spurts. You're like, how did it start?
Yeah, so it started, I've told this story a lot, but it really started with frustration.
Frustration.
So like I got into bartending in 2003.
Okay.
And this is when the OGs started.
Can you explain OGs? Because like you could go back to OG to like the 1920s prohibition bartending. Like, what do you mean OG?
So OG as a kind of a thought of the current cocktail revolution. So this all started back in like the 80s, 90s.
Okay.
In the Rainbow Room, Dale DeGroff. Anybody that's in the craft space knows that name.
Yeah.
Right. So what he did.
So Dale DeGroff, guys, he's the founder of, what do you say, the Cosmopolitan? There's like some iffies there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think currently most people say he wasn't.
Okay.
But he probably had a lot of influence on it, right?
Influence on it, yeah.
So when we talk about Dale DeGroff, we're talking about taking away sweet and sour,
Okay.
right? And putting fresh ingredients in there. So taking away that Industrial Revolution thumbprint that happened in the world of cocktails.
Take away sweet and sour. What do you mean?
So sweet and sour as a commercial product.
Okay. Meaning
So-
like
Literal sweet and sour.
Okay.
Like mix.
the
sweet
mix.
and sour mix.
Okay. If
right?
you guys don't understand, for a long time there were bottles behind the bar that was just a sour mix of just sweetener and like
Citric acid, coloring.
yeah.
And it was really kind of just a heavy-handed ingredient, and it really tainted the flavor, and it's very artificial.
Okay.
So it really kind of coats your mouth in a really bad way, but it is really built for speed, and it is kind of an identity of its time.
Okay.
So when Dale DeGroff opened the Rainbow Room, and I'm sure there's many conversations and interviews about this, the person that was in charge said, we're going to go back to Prohibition-style cocktails. We're going to juice everything fresh. So now you don't have that crutch of everything has sweet and sour in it. Now you have to construct that. So now we're talking about acid, and we're talking about sweetener, right? So then that revolutionized kind of cocktails in general.
What year was that?
I want to say it was like the 70s, 80s,
Okay.
I want to believe. But then it started to evolve.
So that's what you mean the OGs, 70s, 80s.
No,
bartending.
but that took a long time to really start to gain critical mass,
Okay.
right? Until people understood that this is going to be the future. So then he, from my understanding, it started in New York, because that's where the Rainbow Room was. And it kind of started evolving there. But as we started kind of going back in time in these pre-prohibition books, it popped up in a couple different places, New York and San Francisco. And the styles were very different. So New York was old school, booze forward, because they didn't have a lot of, my understanding at the time was they didn't have a lot of access to fresh ingredients. So everything was really about bringing product in from Europe and using really booze forward cocktails.
Sure.
Now, when we go to California, we do have access to a lot of produce. So we took on a much more kind of like market-focused cocktails side of it. So two distinct things were happening, different identities, and that's kind of where it started. So when I started was in 2003, and this is where I kind of picked it up, was when you have these two different focal points. And there was a website at the time called Chowhound.
Chowhound.
Doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
Or like Eagle It. And there was about 5 people in each location having these conversations about cocktails. And I just kind of went down that rabbit hole, and I found it. And so
Found
I'm
what?
like, that site.
Okay.
So I was really into the culinary side of cocktails. So I got into that.
What made you attracted to it?
The creativity. It's super cool. Like you've been in the space a long time.
Sure.
And the ability to have a thought about a cocktail from a flavor perspective, and then being able to implement that is really fascinating to me.
Sure. And it all starts with like the classics, right?
Right.
What do you say?
I would say so. I think things of like, so back in those spaces, we didn't know a lot about cocktails. We were kind of going back to these books and really starting to learn and hash things out. So there wasn't a place to learn all this stuff except for that one site, or maybe 2 spaces.
From Chowhound.
That's it.
Really?
Literally,
At the time?
Literally,
That's
that
crazy
was it.
because right now, like the cocktail
everywhere.
space, it's evolved
Right.
dramatically.
Right.
Right. And all the there's a lot of bartenders that like I've been around who are very knowledgeable about and who read all these old prohibition books, and it's kind of crazy.
Right.
Like this last 10 years has been insane.
Yep.
And it's funny when you talk about it because you were in it a decade before myself, right?
Yep.
And you telling me that it was only on this book.
It wasn't a book. It was
this website is insane.
Right. And so, like, when we start talking about craft cocktails, that's where I got
But
into.
for the listeners to know, what is a craft cocktail?
So, in my opinion, a craft cocktail is really about. Sorry, keep going away from the microphone here. So, a craft cocktail is really about manufacturing your own ingredients, taking care and really manufacturing particular flavors for a particular cocktail. Right. It's not about using sweet and sour out of a mix. It's about making your sweet and sour. Once you have the ability to pull away, to separate your acid from your sweetener, it unlocks an entire world of cocktails that is
Game
not
changer.
possible.
Game changer.
Right? There's cocktails you just can't make with a sweet and sour mix.
Like what?
Last word.
Last word.
Yeah, because all the sweetness is in the alcohol. So if you add the sweet and sour mix,
It becomes too sweet.
oh, it's so heavy-handed. It's just it blows all of the other flavors out of the
I
water.
heard you're a chartreuse guy.
I'm hardcore.
I'll
I
talk to
love
you
it.
after my last bar manager. She just went to chartreuse.
Okay.
And went to go see the distillery.
Okay.
And hung out with didn't hang out with the monks, but like they weren't like they're never seen. She got checked out the whole space and crazy experience. She said.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. If you guys don't know what chartreuse is, you could explain it better than me. What would you describe chartreuse as?
It's probably one of the oldest spirits, liqueurs in the world. It was started off, from my opinion, as the elixir of life. So the monks created this to have an effect on the body to make you long living. And there's a whole dialogue and a whole story about
Do they truly
this.
believe that?
I believe back in the day they did. So if we start thinking about 1600s, 1700s,
Yeah.
you know, snake oil existed back then.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of hardcore science. So when we think about, you know, medicine back then, a lot of it was elixirs, dissolving things into alcohol to consume into your body. So I think they actually did believe that. And there's a whole lore about this particular product that is just absolutely fascinating. Everything from wars and devils and angels and like all of this really cool stuff about this particular spirit.
Yeah.
And it happens to be one of the oldest spirit that has really survived the test of time. Right? So it has 151 or 123 different ingredients or something like that.
No one knows what's in it, guys.
Right.
Except these monks.
And there's only, the lore is that there's two of them.
There's only two of them.
Two or three if there's somebody who's taken over. Right?
Really?
So they are the heads that kind of make this stuff. And so
It's such a cool story.
it's
It
crazy. And
sells
there's-
the cocktail itself, or sells the spirit itself.
it's amazing. And so one of the stories that I heard was that they are not allowed to travel at the same time. They can't be on the same plane at the same time.
That makes sense.
Because if it goes down, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a product that is just entrenched in history, and once you start putting the pieces together, you just appreciate it so much more.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
That's one thing I love about cocktails or spirits in general. Like they tell a lot of history about everything.
Yep.
About the U.S. especially. You know, like people who built the United States drank a lot.
Yep.
You know, there was not all these science articles out about how bad alcohol was for you.
Right.
It was just like you did the thing, and this was part of our culture.
Right.
You know, did these stories intrigue you? Because right now, like you're explaining to me about chartreuse and how like you learned the story and the lore of this story. For me, like I just wanted to sell a good cocktail, right? Or for example, the espresso martini when it started coming back on the scene. The model comes in the bar, give me a drink that will wake me up and fuck me up, right? And I was like, oh, and then this was, and then people like love that they attach that story to the cocktail. They tell it to their friends, this and that, and I was like, oh, that's how you could sell the cocktail.
Right.
Did you enjoy the stories behind the spirits behind the cocktails for yourself, just for a knowledge base, or was it for, I don't know, to sell a cocktail behind a bar? Was it just so you could be more knowledgeable in the space?
A little bit of everything, to be honest with you. I mean, when we think about bartending, it isn't just about making drinks. It's not about delivering liquid from point A to point B. We are entertainers behind the bar. That is our job, right? And we just happen to be really good at crafting cocktails and making cocktails in a very high environment. So it all kind of flows together, right? If we think about hospitality in general, it's about being entertaining, making people feel comfortable in this space. And so you start to pull in all these different tools that you have at your disposal in order to make people comfortable in many different personality types, right? So if I'm sitting with you and we have this conversation about history, I'm like, okay, cool. Nate loves history. I'm going to start dropping knowledge on him about some things if he's interested.
Yeah.
If he gives me that look like, dude, I'm just here to pick up chicks.
Yeah.
We're going to pivot.
Yeah.
We're going to have a different conversation,
conversation.
right? Right.
Yeah.
So it really is about arming, like when I was a bartender, it was about arming myself with as many tools as I could have to provide the coolest space for my guests. Like,
were these the things that intrigued you or wanted to be a bartender?
so the thing that I wanted to be a bartender, there's two main things.
Okay.
First of all, this is a story I've told a lot, is I started my bartending career as a crap stealer in Vegas.
A crap stealer?
Yes.
You were a crap stealer?
I was, for many years.
How was that?
It was insane.
You must be really good with numbers.
So the thing about craps is you have to be good with numbers, but you have to have this innate ability to connect your brain from a numerical aspect to your hands.
Yeah.
Like if you watch a craps dealer, I probably could still do it now. Do you have poker chips?
I don't.
Okay. So I could rub my finger up a stack of chips and drop 5 coins on you without blinking an eye.
That's
you tell
crazy.
me 3, I drop 3. So there's so much dexterity that you have to have in your fingertips.
Yeah. It's such a skill, dude.
And you have to build the muscles.
Yeah.
You just can't get into it and be good at it. It takes years and years and
And you were
years.
in Vegas when you were doing this?
I was in Vegas for probably 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
So you did high volume.
I did very high volume.
Yeah.
Like we did some crazy table games. Like I dealt, it's probably the coolest story that I remember as a craps dealer. So I worked in a Hawaiian casino, strictly Hawaiian clientele, like 95.
Are you Hawaiian?
No.
Okay.
Well, we can talk about that here in a second. But we had 95% Hawaiian clientele. So they would actually charter jets and bring entire jets over of Hawaiian people to this one casino.
Yeah.
And so they were really, really good gamblers.
Yeah.
And so I was a craps dealer there. So we always had volume. We always had a lot of people at our tables. And they had this thing called a Golden Arm Club. And a golden arm is anybody that has held the dice and thrown dice for over an hour. And they go on a plaque in the casino, and once a year
For over an hour.
for an hour.
If you guys don't understand craps, most people don't want to roll the number 7.
Right. Well, it's a kind of a double-edged sword.
It's like you could explain it. Go ahead.
So it's a very intricate game. So, for example, on the very first roll, it's about determining the point or winning or losing immediately. So if you hit a 7 with your very first roll, you automatically win. If you have money on the pass line, which is I'm betting that I'm going to make this number, then you automatically win. 2, 3, or 12, you automatically lose. Those are called craps. Any other number is a number on the board that gets established. So let's say
and
I
you
roll
could bet on those numbers.
Right. So let's say instead of a 7, I roll an 8. So the puck goes from black to white and goes on top of the 8. So now when that puck is white, 7 is bad. I have to hit my 8 before I roll another 7.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that you were kind of getting to is if you are playing craps, on average, you're going to see about 5 to 10 rolls until you crap out or you 7 out and then the next person goes. So it is truly an anomaly for somebody to hold the dice for over an hour.
Yeah.
And if you're knowledgeable in craps and somebody holds the dice, does 10 passes or 10 rolls, you could probably break even. 100%. And that takes about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're knowledgeable in craps, you're on that table for an hour. The first 5 minutes is breaking even. The next 55 minutes is pure profit.
Pure profit.
And you just get aggressive.
That's insane.
Depending on how much you can make. So
how much money did the person make on that?
So at an hour, it really depends on how hard you go, right? Because it's a game at this point, like literally a game.
Yeah.
Do I go heavy in the beginning and really just charge up my numbers, or do I just start taking a couple of bucks here and there, and just writing that out?
Yeah.
If you go aggressive, you can make a lot of money. So the best roll I ever had, I dealt on, was at this Golden Arm tournament, right before everybody was checking out of the hotel to get on their plane to go back to Hawaii. And this old lady grabs these dice. She holds them for 2.5 hours. People miss their planes because she was so on fire, dude. And it was the craziest thing because typically you have 3 people dealing the game. You have the guy on stick. That's the guy calling all the numbers.
Sure.
You have 2 guys on base, and they're giving the money out.
Yep.
And it's all about a system. So it doesn't matter how many people come up on your base, how much chaos, how much money, anything about that. If you stick to the system, you could deal any game. That's what intrigued me about bartending. So she was in for 2.5 hours. And when I look at the board, our minimum was $5. Our maximum was, I think, $3,000 on a number. And so if the dice drop on that number that you place $2,500, $3,500, you're going to get $5,000 back. So people reach table maximum probably about 45 minutes in. Every time the dice drop, I'm paying out $5,000.
Damn.
Per person. I have 9 people on my side.
Wow.
You can start to do the math.
Yeah.
$50,000 every time the dice drop.
Yeah.
And that's on just a number.
Wow.
If it's a winner, it's a lot more. If it's one of those kind of bets that just take higher odds, you're giving out probably $10,000. So
that's a crazy story.
when I thought about it, if you didn't make $50,000 to $100,000, you didn't have a bet on the table.
Yeah.
It was insane.
That's wild.
Yeah, we ran out of chips. We had to buy them back. We were giving out that much money.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it was insane.
That's a cool story,
yeah,
dude.
so
that's the percentage of that happening is like close to 0, guys.
it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost impossible, and you got to experience it.
Yeah, and so that's what drew me into bartending. So I was in that space, And I loved
But
the
did you know
chaos.
anything about bartending at the time?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Zero.
But so if you don't know anything about bartending, how did it draw you to it?
So when I started looking around at, like, I love that space. I love being in there because it's so exciting. And you're in this world of chaos, but you're in the eye of the storm.
Controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos.
Yeah.
So you can start to see the parallels with bartending,
for
right?
sure.
So I looked at the people that have been doing this for a career, and I'm like, I wonder what the future looks like
Of craps.
of craps.
Okay.
So like people that have been doing this for 20 and 30 years,
People do it for a long time.
and they're salty.
They get mad.
They're super pissed off at the world.
Yeah.
Angry.
Around I would say the 20-year mark for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want that to be my future. And so my dad's like, hey, you have an aunt out in California. You should go see her and just kind of get a fresh start. So I did. And
Were you getting salty at the time? Were you not liking
could feel it.
You
I could feel it.
You
Yeah.
could feel the buildup.
You're right.
Okay.
And because, I mean, we talk about bartending being a hard lifestyle. We talked about this earlier.
We talked it before,
And
yeah.
it is. But when you're a crap dealer, amplify that by 2 or 3.
Really?
It's crazy.
More so.
Well, you have alcohol at your disposal because the bartenders that work in all these casinos.
Yeah.
But now you have a whole other factor of gambling. And like when you are a bartender, you have a really amazing night. You make so much money. The first thing that I used to want to do early in my career is go out and drink. I'm like, I want to be part of the party I just left, right?
Yeah.
Same thing happens when you're in the world of craps.
Really?
Like, man, that place was on fire, dude. I can't wait to get off, spend my tips, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to get after it. And so I never did because I knew that it was
You're
a job.
smart guy.
Well, and I didn't want to. I would rather spend my money elsewhere.
Sure.
And I've seen how working the table, you see what happens.
Yeah.
Like the odds are stacked against you.
Yeah.
But my friends were like, let's go, let's get it. I'm like, okay, I'll go hang out with you and, throw about $50-$100 away
Yeah.
and have fun. But after that, I'm like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so after seeing that and all that, I'm like, I got to get out of the space. I don't think it's going to be a healthy place for me. So I moved out to California. And then, so I
Just
think about
out of a whim. Just to visit
pretty
your
much.
aunt.
I packed up my car with whatever it could hold and I left everything else behind.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and
What
I
inspired you to do that?
I need a fresh start.
You start.
Like if I was in Vegas, I would have kept doing it because it was comfortable and I could make a lot of money.
But it was uncomfortable enough for you to leave.
Right. Well, and I really wanted to see the future. I want to see, okay, cool. I really enjoy this. This is fun. I was in my 20s and I was like, I can make a lot of money doing this.
Yeah.
And Vegas is comfortable at the time.
Vegas in general right now is like the capital of hospitality and gambling type of wise. Like there's bartenders there who make $200K a year.
They kill it. They pay cash in houses.
Yep.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much money you can make.
It's insane, guys.
Yeah.
Not as much as in like LA and New York are good, but Vegas is like all night. New York is until 4 a.m. too. Like, and there's big ballers.
Yep. And you hear about it. I mean, it's crazy. So
you get to LA and what happens?
I actually moved up to Napa and I'm looking
spot.
around. Yeah, it's super fun. And so it's entrenched in food and wine.
Did
right?
you get into wine as well and food pairings
I
and
did.
stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I got up there and I'm like, I love that environment and I want to replicate. I want to get into this space. And so earlier I mentioned that there were 2 things that I wanted to do that drew me into bartending. First of all was that environment. I want to be in the chaos. I thrive in chaos.
Yeah.
Build that system. I can work anywhere. So that was one thing. The other thing is I was always kind of awkward when I was in high school, right?
Why do you say that?
Because I was. It's just a data point.
What's your definition of awkward?
So I couldn't carry on conversations. I was very isolated. I was very shy, and I knew I needed to work on that. And so I had this idea.
You knew you needed to work on it because
it made me uncomfortable with myself.
Yeah.
Right?
So you wanted to feel more comfortable with yourself.
Right, exactly. And I knew it was a skill I wanted to develop.
Sure.
You see these people that are very natural and they have great conversations and very kind of outgoing. And I'm like, I want to be that person.
And it can be learned.
It
clearly.
can be learned.
Yeah.
So I knew that if I'm going to be somewhere and I'm comfortable, then I'm not going to grow on this. So I had to get uncomfortable. And so my thinking behind that at that time was I need to pin my finances and my comfort to my personality.
Okay.
And bartending is going to give me that. If I can't hold a conversation or if I'm awkward, I'm probably not going to make as much money.
No.
So this is going to give me my testing ground to really start to develop my skills.
Did you sit at bars and like look at and inspect bartenders and
Nope.
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 You
I just went all in. I was
Okay.
like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I go up to California, Napa, and I walk into a steakhouse at a hotel. And I had a conversation with the manager at the time, super nice lady, and filled out my resume. And she's like, why do you want to work here? And I said, because I want to be your bartender. And she goes, you don't have any experience bartending? I said, I don't care. I will work anywhere. I will be your dishwasher. But in 6 months, I want to be behind the bar. And I will work my ass off the entire time. And she goes, okay. So she hired me. And I had zero experience in hospitality up to this point.
Wow, zero.
Zero. Actually, I take that back. I worked at Ritz-Carlton for about 2 weeks in Orange County. And when they gave me my wardrobe, I quit. It was basically a handkerchief over. So I was like, yeah, I'm pretty uncomfortable here, so I don't think it's going to work out.
Not going to work out.
The pool boy. I was the pool boy. So that was my introduction to hospitality. And beforehand, my family worked cleaning in restaurants. Okay. So I was around bartenders that came in early in the morning, and I thought they were the coolest people. Sure. I mean, they come in, they got their shades on. I didn't realize, when I was 10 that they were hungover.
All hungover.
Completely hungover.
Like, these guys are so cool.
And so that kind of tainted a lot of kind of my thoughts on bartending. Yeah. But then I walked in, and so, zero hospitality experience, zero bartending experience.
Okay, did you hop right behind the bar, or did they have you work up to it?
She made me earn it.
Okay.
And I had a lot of respect for her, so she put me on the floor as a waiter. And I didn't know anything about it. Like, a high-end steakhouse, I didn't know how to wait tables, I didn't know the timing, I didn't know any of those, like, finer things about being a professional server. So I kind of learned there, and then I kept telling her, I'm like, hey, I'll come in on my own time, and I'll just shadow the bartender so they can start teaching me. And she says, okay. And so I did. And 6 months later, after getting hired, I was the lead bartender there.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was very aggressive. I knew what I wanted. And so I just kind of leaned all in.
That's one thing for people who want to get into hospitality, who want to be a bartender, who want to be a server. I'm like, the road could be a lot shorter than you think it can.
Right.
And I tell all the people coming up, I'm like, I promise you, if you memorize all the classic cocktails, if you come in and you at your own time and you learn what people are doing behind the bar and the process behind it and the menu, and you know everything to a T, I guarantee you will get the job.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yeah. 100%.
If you're better than the people already behind the bar, you're gonna get the job.
Well, and I think a lot of it is showing initiative too. Like, I'm somebody that's hungry for this.
Sure.
I'm bringing a lot to the table.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. Give me everything that you have, and I will digest it, and I will be constantly growing my skill set behind the bar. And I think once you see that as a manager, I was like, yep, that's the person I'm going to hire. He might not have the most experience, but he's hungry or she's hungry. I can train that.
And that is a quality that I feel like a lot of people don't look at on a resume.
Right.
And you could tell that by intuition. And I don't know if you've been around, or you could correct me if you don't agree with me. I believe in the last probably 5 years since COVID, the quality of service in a lot of restaurants have gone down, in my opinion.
It's a hard space to be in during COVID, and especially post-COVID.
Yeah.
I think hospitality got pretty beat up. And I think the hardcore veterans that were in there for their own reasons, or they love the craft, or they love the hospitality, they kind of got left by the wayside. Yeah. And so they had to find other jobs.
A lot of people moved. A lot of people changed jobs.
A lot of places closed.
Because if you guys don't understand, like, hospitality is sort of like a dance, what you would say.
Yep.
Like, if you're a professional waiter at a wait house or at a steakhouse or something like that, like, someone gets up, their napkin's on their chair, you fold it up, like, the whole presentation of the specials and like the listening, like back and forth, it's a dance, you know. And so many people now, like even the guests themselves, like they don't understand it too. So like they're like, can I just have this? Right. Like, it's okay. This is a whole presentation. This is a show. This is an experience. Right. Like, let the show happen. And then a lot of people won't. The server who's putting on the show, they're like, oh, they don't want this, I'm not going to try. Right. So it's both parties.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point. I think that, yes, hospitality has changed, but I also think the customers have changed, their expectations, right? We went through a really dark period in COVID where everything was Grubhub, everything was delivery. You were completely removed from other people, right? And your expectations were very different. And so when we start to come back in through COVID, I think the entire nature of hospitality has changed so much that it's almost indistinguishable. It's very different, right? So if it was 100% hospitality in the beginning, everybody was dedicated to that experience, on both sides. We're probably at 70%. Yeah. And there's a lot of misunderstanding in that void. And I think that's where a lot of people get burned out. I think that's where a lot of conflicts happen. And I think there's just been a significant change in the restaurant environment from that perspective.
How does it get better?
I don't know is the real answer. I think a lot of what we do is really about customer service and about craft, right? Of delivering those cool experiences and leaning into that. Like, I don't know about you, but as soon as COVID kind of got diminished, you know, to where it was safe, the first thing I did with my family is we celebrated at a really baller restaurant. And
when it was done.
When it was done. When
Like,
it was
you just
safe.
celebrated because?
So, yeah, we're like, well, it was 30 days after we got our last shot.
Last shot?
COVID
shot.
Yeah,
Okay.
COVID shot. And so we thought we were cool. Like, okay, cool. Let's get out there and let's have some fun. So we went to this baller restaurant. And we're like, after...
In Carlsbad? Near
in
you?
Carlsbad,
Okay,
yeah. There's a cool place called Jean and Julie.
Okay.
And they got their Michelin star a couple years ago.
French restaurant?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's amazing, dude. It's like...
I'll have to come check it out.
It's delicious. It's so good. So we all went there to celebrate, and it was this like resetting, like cool.
Jean Julie?
Jean Julie. Okay. Yep. I'll definitely send you a link.
Yes,
it's
please do.
delicious. So we went there to celebrate, and I think that was our way of kind of resetting our expectations. But I think there's been a lot of changes to your point. People have left, and I think that just institutional knowledge is gone. We're not quite there anymore.
I don't think it's just a prioritized, right? And I think that's one thing that I love about the new bartending scene. Not the new bartending scene, the revisited bartending scene is they're caring about the craft of the cocktail again. They're caring about the history. They're caring about the technique. You know, like gone are the days are the sweet and sour behind the bar. Like, I haven't seen a sweet and sour bottle behind a bar in at least 4 years, 5 years, right? Have you? I mean, maybe you have.
Oh yeah. Well, and you have to. In my opinion, there's a lot of the country that hasn't caught on to the benefits of the fresh juices, right?
I guess I'm just in California and in LA.
Right, and there's a lot of places that just are. That's what they do. That's what their customer expects. And when you start to change things, that's when customers start to be angry. Like, oh, this is my margarita spot. I want sweet and sour because I've had it that way for 20 years.
Oh yeah, and they don't.
Steakhouses are kind of notorious for that.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
that's the thing. I only get wine at steakhouses because I've had bad experiences with cocktails, and I'm like, am I going to spend $25 for a cocktail that I don't enjoy?
Usually, I hate to say it, but yeah.
And I was like, wine's kind of the way to go.
Wine and beer are safe, man.
Yeah, wine and beer are safe. That's why, like, for cooks and bartenders, I would say a lot of bartenders, when they get off the shift, they usually have a beer and a shot. If you guys don't know, it's kind of ironic. Same thing with the chef. I've had a lot of chefs on the podcast recently, and they don't garnish up their food nice and pretty. They eat from the pot, you know, and they love cooking for other people, but not necessarily for themselves. Same thing with cocktails. Like, for me, I think the most I go is usually old fashioned, Negroni at night. Pretty simple, pretty easy, you know, but like, I'm not really going to spend my time to make juice a margarita, make some fresh lime juice. Like, when people come over, for sure. Right. And I'll do that. But for myself, I'm just like, no.
Kind of. Yeah. And I'm the same way. One of the funny things about my wife and I with our company is, you know, we have a lot of cocktails on just because of social media. We have to produce a lot of content.
Yeah.
But we don't really drink that much.
Yeah.
Like, this is probably the first cocktail I've had in a year.
Oh.
Like, we'll drink for
I appreciate
social.
it. That's so
and
awesome.
It's because it's work.
Yeah.
I associate cocktails with work.
But you taste it at work, for sure. You taste
I
that.
tasted to make sure it's balanced. But I think, you know, we've been doing this for so long, I could probably create a cocktail in my head and it'll be 99% okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hold that special quality to me anymore. When it becomes special is when I get to sit down with other people and enjoy their intake and their perspective on specific cocktails. Like, this is delicious.
Thank you, for sure.
Yeah, and like, that's when it gets me excited. So when I travel and I sit down, actually, I take that back. I had a cocktail a couple of months ago when we were traveling. And so I asked the bartender, like, what are you enjoying today? Because we already had the report. You know, if you just start that at like a busy bar in LA, they're going to be like, really, man? Like, I don't have the time to tell you this. What do you want?
Yeah.
But we had the time. I had built the rapport. And I asked her, I'm like, hey, what are you excited about? And her eyes lit up. She goes, I just put this cocktail on the menu. I'm super excited about it. I've only been tending bar for 3 months, but I got this cocktail on the menu. I'm like, I want it.
I love the passion.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, I want to see what you
create.
What you
creativity.
Create. So I get more excited about other people's creativity and seeing them enjoy it and like really experiencing cocktails through their lenses than going to a really famous cocktail bar and just ordering some off the menu. So that's kind of, you know, what I love.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Going back to the story of how you became a lead bartender within 6 months, like, how did you get there? Because for a lot of people, a lot of bartenders, like head bartender is kind of a prestige in the hospitality space.
Right.
Because even though I don't like it nowadays, but servers make a lot more money than bartenders.
Yep.
And I would say the skill set is lower because you don't need to memorize the cocktail stuff, but you have to understand food a little bit more. But closing down a bar, side work for cleaning just a tray versus cleaning a whole bar is a lot harder in terms of work. And bartenders are staying until close. Like in some places, if you're not working in a nice spot, you're mopping down, cleaning up. I had the ability to work at some really nice places that I didn't have to clean like that much, which is like a privilege for sure. And I guess for you, how did you get that, I guess at the time, the position that you desired so much for?
So with that particular job, it was a matter of luck. So this was an old school steakhouse that wasn't very busy. So it was low volume. And it was super old school. So the person that that taught me was a lady in her 60s. So she was super old school. She didn't even know what bitters was for. And this was before any of this stuff even started, before fresh juices even hit California, like Napa. So, I trained with her, and then she got sick. She actually went out with an injury. She had to get a surgery.
Wow.
So it was more about filling a role than choosing me to be a head bartender.
Nice.
And when I say it's a really slow place, it was dinner only, and there was 3 bartenders total. So the other 2 bartenders did it as a hobby and kind of signed income, and I was the only one passionate about it. So it was kind of a clear choice from the manager's perspective. Like, he's going to take this seriously. He's going to take this environment seriously. So I'm going to give him the opportunity to do that.
How did you grow your skill set if there were no one there was, I guess, quote unquote, objectively better than you?
I just jumped in and just survived is the honest answer. I made a lot of terrible cocktails, I'll be honest. So a lot of it was make it pink, throw a little cranberry juice in there, throw a little grenadine, send it. And and so a lot of it was that. And it was pretty easy to master like 4 or 5 cocktails. I remember the first time somebody asked me for an old fashioned with bitters. I was like, what does that even mean? And so I had to look it up. And then I dusted off the bitters that we had behind the bar. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I tasted it and sent it out, and I'm like, this is awful.
No.
I hate this drink because I didn't know.
Also, a lot of people just don't like old fashioned.
Right, exactly, at the time. So it really kind of opened my eyes of like, what is this crazy ingredient, and why does this guy like it?
Love it.
Right.
The people who love it,
right? So then after that, it was like, okay, I need to learn more. And so that's what really started it. And then I was going to school for molecular biology. Oh, shit. So I have this hardcore science background, right? And so
they kind of all blend together from crafts to molecular biology.
Right. Yeah. So we started talking about pH levels. We started talking about bricks of sugar. We started talking about alcohol percentages and content. No. This was just kind of me putting my science into the cocktails.
That's awesome.
Kind of what it got me excited about it. But at that time I was going to school. And so I got really excited about cracking the code on cocktails.
Cracking the code. What code?
Of designing a cocktail. So you have an idea of a cocktail, right? Let's say it's cucumber and strawberry. Okay. There's a lot of different techniques you can apply to this. Yeah. You can muddle. Most people, that's where you start. And then it turns out it's not exactly what I wanted. So then it became a puzzle of like, okay, that clearly didn't work. What is going to work? Infusion's not going to work with cucumber because it's too soft, in my opinion. So now what? And so now I started.
You barely get a taste.
Right. Yeah. So I started to experiment with techniques. Yeah. And this is when I fell in love with craft cocktails. It's like, there's so much to learn here from a technique and a culinary side. Yeah. I could spend the rest of my life here, and I have. Yeah. This is probably going on, 2003, so 21 years. Yeah. And I'm still learning every single day.
Every single day.
Yeah, it's so cool. I love this space so much.
And there's so many people who've done crazy experiments in the past that are just hidden in books. Right. And the craft cocktail book scene is just like, there's so much in there, I can't even consume it. Right. Like everything from like all of Jerry Thomas's stuff. Right. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, even some of the big people in our space, if you're in a cocktail space, you may know these names, but like David Arnold. Yep. The guy's a legend, man. This guy just killed a Camper English. Like if you're talking about ice.
Who's Camper English? I gotta look at his stuff.
So Camper English is the OG blogger that is personally responsible for Clear Ice.
For Clear Ice.
He is the person that cracked the code on Clear Ice, and he is the one that if you have Clear Ice in a bar, you have to thank him. like legitimately.
Do you know how they make it large scale? So I have a buddy who runs a clear ice company out of LA.
Yep.
But I make it at home just through the single cooler direction. And then I got a similar cooler, but that had their own bricks, but it's not as cool. I feel like you have to cut it out on yourself. But on a large scale, do you know how they do it?
I do. So there is a machine out there called a Klein Bell machine.
Klein
Bell.
So
CLINE, bell, like a regular ringing bell.
Yeah.
And so they are the people that make large format 300-pound blocks. And traditionally I think my understanding is how they got started was with ice sculptures. So when you go to these fancy ballrooms.
Well, ice sculptures are always clear, right?
Right. They're always clear and they're huge.
Yeah.
So they chainsaw them down to the shapes and they have these tools and they kind of form the ice through these large 300-pound blocks.
Wow.
So I think it was one of the guys in San Francisco in the time that brought that into bars. 300-pound blocks. And I saw them do this back in like 2008, I want to say.
That's a long time. Wait, clear ice was a thing back then?
Yeah, so this was just starting to hit right about 2008, 2009. Okay. And they grabbed chainsaws, electric chainsaws with no grease on them, and they started breaking down this 300-pound block of ice into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces until they ended up with those 2-inch cubes, 2.5-inch cubes.
Yeah.
And so after that, I'm like, that's insane, dude. Yeah. That is so crazy. And then
you saw this happen.
Yeah, they did it for a USBG event, and I was like, I need to learn more about this. Yeah. And it was incredible. So, but yeah, he is one of the OGs that is personally responsible for that. But Klein Bell is the machine and the company that makes these large format, and I think they have them all the way down to 50-pound blocks now.
Wow.
But yeah, if you own a company that does manufacture ice, that's how they do it. Just giant blocks.
It's a big profit.
Yeah.
Because they charge $1.50, $2 per ice cube, right? And I'm just like, it's just water.
Yep. But it's perfectly clear water.
Perfectly clear water.
Right.
And it's like, okay. What's your take on garnishes and ice cubes in a cocktail?
It depends on the cocktail, honestly. Yeah. Like, with all things cocktail, you really have to understand what the end result is and what the effect of that specific ingredient is going to be on the cocktail. So when we talk about ice, there's two things that just kind of free-forming off this. There's two things that come to my mind when we talk about ice. First is the science of dilution, right? You're diluting water. It's making your ingredients bind together. It's giving it room to breathe, right? So that is one part of it. The other part is the aesthetic part, right? Like, it looks cool in my glass. It's going to chill. It's going to evolve over time because of the dilution process. So those are the two elements of it. Now with the garnish, it could be just standard visual, right? This is going to make my cocktail pop. But for me, when I think about garnishes, it's part of that storytelling that is so interesting to me about telling about cocktails. Like, how does my garnish contribute to my cocktail, right? And if you can do
the utility aspect.
Not only the utility, so it's a merging of utility and visual, like appeal, right? So if, for example, if I'm making a cocktail and I'm just going to throw a bunch of ingredients out there, right? So if it has lime in there, if it has sugar cane or molasses in there, if it has a really cool, like a habanero in there as well, I want to tell the story to my guests of what's in there, but I want to do it in a really cool way. So I'm going to start looking at those elements that I just described. I have lime, I have molasses or sugar or brown sugar of some form, and I have habanero. Yeah. So I want to tie those elements into my cocktail to amplify the flavors as well. Okay. Right? So that's kind of where I'm going to go. So maybe it is a piece of sugar cane that I'm going to put in there to really tell the story that there's sugar cane in here and molasses. Maybe I put the habanero as a skewer in there, and maybe I do a dehydrated lime wheel. And so I'm kind of tying the elements of the cocktail with the garnish itself to tell a story. Sure. Right? So that is one area, but sometimes I'm busy and I just want to throw a damn garnish in a cocktail. Just right?
Yeah, just do the thing.
Right, exactly.
There's some bartenders out there that the only reason why I'm asking is because between the chefs that I've had on the podcast and just a lot of bartenders don't want to talk about stuff, and they also just can't make it because they're drunk. But a lot of bartenders will be like, I don't like garnishes because they don't have utility. Like, I'll put a lime wedge on if I want to make a margarita more acidic. Like, they could squeeze the lime wedge in, and there you go.
There's function, absolutely.
Functional.
Yeah.
And then, like, a lot of the food people have it on, it's like you eat with your eyes first.
Right.
Right. And like you believe it tastes better already because it is pretty.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, okay, there has to be a fine line in between that because I agree with both.
Yes. And I think it depends on the type of bar you're in, right? If you're in a neighborhood bar and you get this orchid in your cocktail, you're going to be like, what the hell am I doing? I didn't come here for an orchid. I came here to get my buzz on, right? Yeah. So I think, you know, it is matching the cocktail with the experience that you're trying to, and the environment that you're in, right? But I love storytelling through garnish and tying all these things together. And not only from like the creative side, but from the business side as well, right? If you go to
business side.
Right. So if, for example, when you worked in the bars that you worked in, were there any highly visual cocktails that just sold?
Yeah, even though they weren't that great.
Right.
For sure. They were just pretty.
Right.
Yeah.
So you see them going out and like, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to have that.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be cool on Instagram.
Dude, the smoked cocktails. We always had to smoke our old fashioned, and it was a good old fashioned. It was we used maple syrup instead of simple syrup.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Just Angostura bitters, Buffalo Trace, stir, orange garnish, and then we'd put it in this huge fucking cloak.
Yep.
And we'd smoke it with like cherry oak or something like that.
Sure.
And those things get disgusting after a long period of time of just like repeated smoke and not cleaning.
Right.
But it would kind of take over the cocktail sometimes.
Right.
And I think there's a time and place for it. I think that if you do it properly, like you could have too much smoke.
Right.
Right. And everyone wants more smoke because it looks prettier.
Right.
But then the cocktail isn't that good, you know?
Yep.
So that's my opinion. I don't know. What's your opinion on it?
Well, and I think it's one of those things too. It's all about balance, right? You know, I think the more control you give a guest, if that's part of the experience that you're really signing your guests up for, that's super cool.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is a drink that needs to be, that we hope that you drink. So if, you know, smoke definitely can get heavy-handed. You know, take your pictures. Let's get this over with. Let's make that Instagram moment for you.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. Let's do this thing.
Yeah.
But really communicating to them, like, look, if this thing sits too long, it's going to get saturated.
Yeah.
And all you're going to taste is campfire.
Yeah.
Like the novelty and the nuance of this cocktail is destroyed.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and do this. But if you want to enjoy the cocktail, let's go ahead and, you know, limit the exposure of the smoke.
Sure.
So it is very much a presentation piece, and I love it. I think it's super cool. It can get heavy-handed, and especially with the tools. Like the tools definitely depend. Like if you have the little tiny smoker on top, that gets very heavy-handed very quickly.
Because it's like all the smoke is just trapped in the top of the glass.
Right. And, you know, when you pull it off, it looks super cool.
Yeah.
But that is got nowhere to go. But that cloche that you were talking about, there's room for it to breathe. There's more room.
A little bit.
You know, it has a little bit more visual appeal. But
have you used that blaster that's been around the last couple
Flavor
years?
Blaster?
Flavor Blaster?
No, I haven't. It's funny because I wanted to, because I saw it all over TikTok. I saw it all over
huge
everywhere.
For a second, man.
And I clicked the link. I'm like, I think I got to get one of these just for social media and like making stuff. And I got on there. It was like $400.
$400?
And I was like, good for them, man.
Good for them. That's
but
crazy.
I couldn't pull the trigger on it.
Can't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't love smoke that much that I get to see that.
Right.
And it looks aesthetically pleasing.
Right.
Right?
Yep. This giant bubble on top of your cocktail that's all smoky. It's cool. But $400
if you guys don't know what it is, it's basically there's this gun and it blows this big bubble like an adult I don't know, blowing bubble gun.
Right.
Right? And inside is this flavored smoke. And the bubble comes out, guys, and it lands on whatever glass you're in. And so it's like this nice little like bubble of smoke on top of your cocktail. And then right before you drink it, they poke it and the smoke dissipates all over your cocktail. It's super aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And then they taste it. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to taste that much better. But,
but it's cool. And if you saw it at a bar, you'd be like, I got to buy one, right?
Especially like all the ladies out there. They love their aesthetically pleasing cocktails.
You know, and that's what I mean by about the business side.
Yeah.
Like you're charging a premium for this experience.
I love that you think about that because from every aspect, you've kind of talked about the psychology of just the business side.
Yep.
Like when did that switch? I guess like from bartender to where you are now, like what's that filler? What's that space?
So I think it was very early on in the beginning. When we started getting into the world of infusions, and that became a staple in the world of craft cocktails, I started to see the benefit of technique.
Okay, can you explain infusions for anyone who doesn't know?
Sure, absolutely. So basically, you're just adding things to alcohol to put the flavor of that thing into the alcohol. Yeah. So orange, for example, lavender, for example, you infuse the alcohol with that flavor. And so one of the cocktails that I had on the menu that I inherited was a lavender mojito. And
Sounds good.
it was number one seller. I mean, we're talking about business. It just sold.
Yeah.
So we did a ton of it. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're using rail gin on that.
And did you infuse the gin with lavender?
No, so this was all syrup based. So they did a bunch of syrup. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to do a similar take and with different ingredients, but I'm going to go ahead and infuse this. And when at that time, we're talking 2004, 2005, if you had these buzzwords on a menu, you could charge a premium because you were manufacturing something at this point, right?
Wait, did you use a mojito with gin, or did you did?
No, we did it with rum.
Okay, cool.
But when I started like a cucumber gimlet, for example, cucumber basil gimlet, I infused it with cucumber, so that's how I know it's like super soft. You're not going to get that punch that you're looking for, but I did it anyways. And so we were using rail gin at this point. And so I could charge more money because I was applying technique to it.
Sure.
And it looked interesting on the menu. So then my costs went down on this cocktail. I made more money. So when I figured that formula out, I was like, okay.
Made more money for the restaurant.
To the bottom line.
Yeah.
Right. So, the cost of goods.
Which makes more for yourself too.
Right, exactly. So that was really kind of the starting point of really understanding that once you apply technique to cocktails, you can charge more money because you're investing more time and energy into it.
For sure.
And it's a little bit of marketing as well.
Kind of works with everything, right?
Right, exactly.
And this is still at the steakhouse.
No, so this is I think my third job at this point. So this was at a place up in Sonoma that still is around called The Girl and a Fig, and it's a really popular place.
Nice.
So we were crushing it. We were doing probably on a Saturday, Sunday brunch, we were probably doing 350, 400 covers for brunch.
Wow.
So this place was just going crazy, popping.
Was it a mimosa place?
No, this was a French bistro. So we were doing like Pernod and Ricard and like all these cool spirits.
Really?
And so when I inherited this, they were already doing kind of quasi-craft early in the day, fresh juices and stuff like that.
This is what year?
Oh, man, this was after probably 2008.
Okay. Cool.
So they were already doing like quasi-craft. And so then I took it over and I just went all in on craft. And so I was able to really take our numbers in a really profitable way. We were already profitable because with just that number of people coming through the door, you have a lot more opportunity to make money.
Yeah.
But when I inherited the program, we took it from like a 22% cost down to like a 17. So we were just making a lot more money through alcohol. So when I started applying these techniques, I knew I could charge more. And so that's what we did. And so that's when I started learning my business side, the numbers side, and really kind of latching on to data of like, okay, cool. How much time does this take for me to make this cocktail?
So are you logging this? Do you have like a
Oh, I had spreadsheets. I had
Really?
I was deep, man. So we had a
what inspired you to do that?
So I had a really good mentor, and it was somebody I worked with early on back in 2005 in Santa Rosa. I was going to school up in Sonoma State, and I was
For microbiology.
yeah, and so I was a bartender there, and I really loved it. And so he was a manager there, and he kind of saw like how I was taking the profession and taking it seriously. So then he moved from Santa Rosa to Sonoma, where I lived, and I found out about it. I'm like, hey, man, I really want to work for you. I really enjoyed our time. And he's like, oh, yeah, I remember you. Come in. You're going to be my manager, my bar manager. And so he did. And he's like, I'm going to show you this tool, and I'm just going to let you figure it out. So he didn't tell me anything about it. He's like, this is how you navigate this. These are the main tools that I use. Do me a favor. I want you to figure this out for me. I have a project for you. And he didn't give me any guidelines. He didn't say, this is how you do it, wrong or right. Get in there, sandbox it, break it, fix it, all the things. So it gave me a really safe place to explore data. And so that's what I did. And so I started plugging in numbers. I started costing all my cocktails out. He didn't even show me how to cost. I figured it out on my own. Every single cocktail that was on the menu was costed in the data. So then I could start pulling
Did you
numbers.
learn, was these spreadsheets already coded out?
No.
You
these.
learned it?
Yep. Wow. So, and he knew this. He knew all
Dude,
this.
this is so impressive.
Right. So I was like, I can do this. I can figure this out.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's your target? And so he pinned a lot of our data or a lot of our salary from bonuses on what we could do from a cost center perspective, revenue center, and also labor. So
Were you managing at the time?
Yes, I was a bar manager at the time.
Okay.
And so he gave me these projects. And so he's like, figure this out. I'm like, cool. And so I get in there and just do it. I'm like, okay, if I need to do this with this goal in mind, these are the steps I need to put in place in order to figure this puzzle out.
Yo, for the bar managers out there, like if you guys have an opportunity to do this, like you will stand out, and like you can negotiate. You have leverage.
Oh, it's
You have
huge.
leverage
It's
to
so huge.
negotiate like what you're worth.
Right.
Because if you're just a bar manager who orders stuff and puts together a menu because you know the ratios of a margarita,
Right.
like you're not. There's other people who have just as much value as you. And if you have someone who could code out a sheet who knows the exact price of like every single ingredient, the profit level of every single thing, you will make the company more valuable as well as yourself.
You will never want for a job
Yeah.
once you learn the skill. And I think this is one of the most frustrating things I find in the world of hospitality is we don't focus on that education.
Zero.
Like when I was very lucky because I had a really good mentor that allowed me to explore these ideas with an outcome in mind.
Yeah.
And so I grew my ability to manage this data and really start to dig into this. And to your point, if you can have this conversation in an interview, that's it. You name your price.
Yeah.
I mean,
You bring it up.
Oh, I brought down my costs from 23% down to 15. This is how I did it. This is my spreadsheets. This is how I can do it for you. That is money.
Valuable.
It is so valuable. It changes the entire conversation. And when people don't understand the power of data spreadsheets from a management perspective, you're leaving money on the table, like significant
A ton of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Because 100,000s of drinks a year.
Yeah.
And then you times that by just the 20 cents per cocktail. It's a good amount of money.
Yeah. And I mean, even like, and there's so many different ways that you can use data to really improve bars and restaurants. So that was kind of one area of like the cost center. Labor is something I always managed.
Yeah.
So we had a target of 30%. And so I'm like, cool. So I would analyze the numbers going up to the end of the month, and I would start cutting people aggressively if I knew I was over my cap. So I never missed my bonuses.
Yeah.
I hit every single one of them.
Yeah.
And so once you can control the data and you know the variables you can manipulate, you can hit your targets whatever they are. And this absolutely applies to business as well, right?
Well, I think that's the privileged part of everyone thinks they just deserve a bonus, right? And I'm just like, why? You don't know if you earned it. Like I have a few general manager friends, and again, hospitality's been suffering the last few years.
Yep.
They kind of didn't get a bonus, and they're like, I deserved one. I'm like, okay, why?
Yeah.
And then they won't give me an explanation.
Right.
I was like, if you could explain to me exactly the things that you told me right now, I'm like, oh, for sure, you should definitely go after and talk.
Right.
But you can't even give me an answer right now.
Right. And that's the frustrating thing. Like if we don't have the conversation early in hospitality about hitting targets, the financial responsibility of business, then we're going to continue to see a lot of business go out of
But it's
business.
the education part. So many people don't know. Like, and you have to preface that.
Right.
Because that's the description of the job that, like, you just have to be educated on.
Right.
You
And
know?
so that's, I think in my opinion, and we're kind of going off the rails, I think, with kind of some of the things we were talking about, but I think it's really important to do that. Because I think the hardest transition in my experience, and maybe you can let me know yours as well, is that transition from a bartender to a manager. The gap of knowledge between those two positions is absolutely immense, right? So when you're bartending, it's all about hospitality. It's about executing recipes or coming up with your own recipes. There's not a lot of negotiating. There's not a lot of business forethought that goes into that role. But then we hand somebody the keys to the restaurant or the bar and say, make me money, make it profitable.
Yeah.
You've given them zero education on how to do that.
Yeah.
They're going to rely on what they've done up to this point that has made them successful, and that's not setting them up for success.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know why, and I have a theory on this, is when owners start gatekeeping information, they're afraid, my understanding, my thought is they are afraid that they are creating their own competition,
Sure.
right? They're going to take this information and open their own restaurant.
But it's hard to do that.
But you're basically signing up for years and years
Of failure. Not
Right.
failure, but like a lot of loss on money.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Right.
And the reason why I never accepted a bar manager position is because, like, I knew what it'd take to be a good one.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff that you just talked about. And like just with my other endeavors, I was like, I don't think I could put the effort that I want to be the type of bar manager that I would admire.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And that's only the number side. That's the business side. We're not even talking about the leadership side.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different
conversation. Learning to deal with people who work under you, that's different. And like bartenders, head bartenders, like I've been a head bartender. You have to do micro of that job.
Right.
You know? Back to the frustration.
Yeah.
Of the things behind the bar that you wanted to, I guess, like to develop your own barware and all this. Like, what is that frustration? Like, was it happening throughout the bartending career, bar managing career, and you're like, I need to make a product. Like, I need to put it in the world.
Going back to kind of the origin story of A Bar Above as a company, it really did start as a way of kind of dealing with the frustrations I experienced with tending bar. So kind of backtracking a little bit, when I was in Napa and Sonoma, I was kind of really thinking about these things and trying to develop my skills behind the bar from technique and the business side. And I thought I was really good at it. But like I mentioned earlier, there was two places that were kind of going off in America at the time, New York and San Francisco. And so I knew if I wanted to be serious in my hospitality career and really kind of get at the forefront of where I wanted to be, I need to be in San Francisco. So I made that jump. I'm like, cool, I'm going. And so I started interviewing on the weekends while I was still working 2 jobs up in Sonoma. And so I finally got a job in San Francisco, and I'm like, I'm making a move. I'm doing this. I got a management job.
Another big hop.
Just done. I'm done.
Done.
Yeah.
Committed.
So I committed to it.
Get uncomfortable again.
Let's get uncomfortable. I stayed in a seedy hotel in North Beach in San Francisco. Yeah. I rented my room by the night. Wow. Had bed bugs and all of it until I could find a place to live. So I jumped in all like
savage,
just all in. And when I got there, I realized how little I knew. So I was like, okay.
Like what? What was one thing that that they said or an experience, and you're like, whoa, I don't know that much? Well,
it was day one, honestly. Like I was behind the bar. So I managed, and I was going around the circles, but I always wanted to get back into bartending. So when I became a manager, I started seeing the professional bartenders that were working in that space at that time, and they were just killing it. I mean, the tools they were using, everything, the cocktails, they were just to the next level. And I'm like, I don't know how these guys are doing
Explain.
it. Like the depth of flavor, the complexity of the cocktail, the volume at which they were operating and executing these really intense cocktails was just impressive. So I got a job as a bartender like a year later, and somebody asked me to make an old fashioned. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I made the old fashioned how I usually make. And at that point, I was muddling cherries and oranges and like bitters.
that phase of the old fashioned was wild.
Right.
Because almost every bartender did at that time.
Right. So then when I got to San Francisco, they weren't doing it that way. Yeah. They were doing it the old school way of bitters, sugar cube, sparkling water a little bit. And then booze.
Dude, no one does the sparkling water anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, it changes the cocktail.
It does.
And the raw sugar versus simple syrup, it does make a difference.
It's a personal choice, and I love it.
It's a personal choice.
But so I was making them that way. And so this was kind of the starting point of A Bar Above, is they would ridicule me. Like, you're doing it wrong, man.
They would say that.
Sucks.
Wow.
Where have you bartended before?
Wow.
And I'm like, how do you make it? And it's like, I'm not even going to tell you. And I'm like, well, that's messed up, dude.
That's fucked up, yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So they were very gatekeeping on all this stuff, but they would judge me and not correct me. So I was like, this.
Really?
And this was early in the beginning of mixology.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And so I knew I hated it. I'm like, you guys suck.
Yeah.
And I don't like this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my frustration with the industry started. So what I did is like, all right, to you guys, middle finger in the air. And I'm like, we're going to change this. So that's when we started. My girlfriend or my wife, girlfriend at the time, was like, let's do YouTube. I wanted to do DVD sets at the time to communicate technique. So she's like, yeah, let's do YouTube. I'm like,
cocktail skills available to everybody, right? That's kind of like your mission statement.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I kind of put a spotlight on this, and I really started to share techniques, advanced techniques, culinary techniques around cocktails through YouTube. And that's kind of what started us, is kind of breaking down those barriers, right? Like if you're in Kansas and you're cool about cocktails, you want to get down, like I'm going to show you how to do it.
That's easy. I mean, that's early. That's early.
Right.
No one was doing YouTube videos back then.
Right.
About cocktails.
And so we started, and I was like, I just want to share this knowledge.
2008, you said?
2000. So I started tending bar in San Francisco around 2008, 2009. We started our first YouTube channel, first YouTube video in 2013.
Okay.
So it took us a long time to get to that point. Right.
Still early.
So, so that was kind of the point
And you
of
were
the
open
frustration.
to it. You were open to it. You were like,
Yeah. I was like, let's do this. Absolutely, 100%. So what we started with was really describing why, right? Like, this is when nobody knew how to make use a julep strainer. And there was conversations about it. Like, think about that. Like, these essential tools that we use today, nobody knew how to use because they were so new. Or why to use them.
yeah.
Like, do you use it when you shake? I don't know. Let's check it out. Like, do you use it when you stir? I don't know. Let's try that. Do you do it up or down? I don't know. Let's try that. So a lot of it was like applying scientific method to like.
Okay, explain up or down, because like I don't know what it is.
So when your spoon is facing up or down, it reacts differently in your mixing glass.
Okay.
Right? But we didn't even know they were supposed to go with mixing glasses.
I didn't know that. So I only do it down.
Right.
What's
so the bowl
purpose?
facing down.
Yeah. What's the purpose of it up?
Personal preference.
That's it.
That's all it comes down to.
You said it's different when it hits the glass.
No. With mixing glass.
Oh, okay.
So if you're using mixing glasses,
Okay.
which were brand new then,
Yeah.
like nobody was making mixing glasses. So like all these things we had to stumble through to figure out,
Yeah.
but everybody had an opinion on it and they were diehard about it, even though they didn't know what they were talking about. So I was like, I don't know, man, let's learn this together. So that's what we did.
Figure it out.
When we fumbled through it and we're like, okay, this is the pros, this is the cons. This is why you would do it. In my opinion, this is how I would use this tool and how I'm going to use this tool. If you have a different opinion, let me know.
I want to give you my full circle moment with a bar above.
Oh, okay.
So I started bartending 2017, I believe. And I took an ABC bartending course in Venice just to like learn the specs. And a lot of people in the service industry like are very like negative towards bartending schools.
Sure.
And they're just like, that's not how you learn this and that. Like traditionally, like become a bar back, learn from a bartender. It's like supposed to be like a very apprentice mentor type of vibe.
Right.
And it's still not that case anymore. And I really like it to be. Like, again, the gatekeeping stuff, a lot of people just don't want to teach people.
Right.
You know, and I feel like it's a lot better now.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'd agree with
it, probably like 10 years ago, not as much as you were saying.
Yep.
And so I learned 500 cocktails, anywhere from like a tequila soda to like
A rusty nail. And,
a rusty nail, bad old fashioned, like blue Hawaiian,
Right.
like all these crazy ones, LA water, like stuff that like I've never made before, but they're in the top of my head because this bartending school is there.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy all the things. And in 2017, I bought my shaker, my tins, the julep strainer, all this stuff. And I was studying like just you and what you've done. And I was like, that logo looks so familiar. Like I've seen it before. And I go back to my very first tins. They were a bar
No
above.
way.
Yeah, I have them.
Do you, seriously?
Yep.
How long ago was that?
2017.
What?
Yeah.
That's so
and
crazy.
I was just like, no way.
That's
like
so
this
crazy.
is crazy right now.
Right.
I was like, I gotta tell Chris.
Well, and so kind of getting into the tools, I think that's the thing that we do is like, the thing I always tell people is I've broken every tool there is to break. So I know where the weaknesses are. So we produce tools that are really, really durable for bartenders.
You brought your first tool that broke.
Yeah, so we launched the Bar Tool Company back in like 2015, 2016, and we did this online bartender forum.
Okay, so did this break, the bottom part?
The bottom part.
Okay.
So when we are talking about cocktail shakers, I always prefer a Boston 2-piece. So one big one, one small one, they fit together and they create a seal.
Yeah. You don't really see anything else, right?
I mean, there was a point where cobbler shakers kind of were fire.
Have you seen a bullet shaker before?
I have. I'm not.
I have one up there.
Okay.
But like I don't use it because
It looks so awkward.
they're dumb.
Yeah, right. The weight on it looks weird.
They look
like,
cool, but
right.
like
not a big fan.
Not a big fan.
Okay. But yeah, they seal together, and that's what you shake your cocktail in, is this 2-piece thing. And oftentimes you'll see it in glass. But anybody that's been in high volume, you know that's only a matter of time until that's going to break, and then you're going to get scarred.
For sure.
Right. You're bleeding in your well. You're done for the night.
Well, a lot of people, did they just sell the big part? The tall part?
So
Because like my first bartending job, we used like a beer glass.
Sure. Yep. And so that was kind of what started is I broke too many in my hand. So like, all right, I'm done with that. I want to go to metal, and metal's harder to work with because it's flexible, right? And
Harder to work with, really.
in my opinion, yeah, because with and it really depends on the cocktail shaker that you're working with, but it's harder to break that seal. With glass, it's a lot easier to break that seal because it's so rigid that the other one bends to it, right?
Yeah.
But the hazard of breaking, especially if you don't have tempered glass, that thermal shock is going to shatter.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time.
And then you got to remake your cocktail. You got a bloody hand, all the above.
Right, exactly. So I converted pretty early on to metal on metal. And at the time, there wasn't any on Amazon that were any good. So we sell the 28 and 18 ounce and they pair well and they're perfect.
Yeah.
At the time, it was a 28 ounce and an 8 ounce.
It was during 2017. I remember it vividly.
Right.
I remember it was the only shaker on Amazon that had stellar reviews.
Right. And we killed it, dude. When we launched it, it's a 120-day lead time to make our material to get it from China to the United States. And we sold out of our first batch in 30 days.
That's insane.
And we're like, well, this is what we do now.
How was that feeling?
It's crazy. Like, it was absolutely crazy because, like, leading up to that point, we had tried a bunch of stuff. Our original idea was to be a media company, YouTube. Like, lean into YouTube, sell courses, digital. And we ran out of money. So we had about a year strip of cash that we could, and we burned through it, like just producing content and hoping people would buy our stuff.
Can you describe that part? So, like, you're a bar manager, right? And you decide, I'm gonna make barware. Right?
So it didn't start off that way.
It didn't. Okay.
No. So I was a bar manager, and I had this idea for this company, and I wanted to sell information about how to evolve your career behind the bar.
Okay.
And the original idea was DVDs, like the theory of cocktails.
The YouTube channels, the DVDs.
Right.
Okay. DVDs don't exist anymore, guys.
Yep, exactly. 8-track. So when that was the idea, my girlfriend, wife now, Julia, said, maybe
Shouts
we
out
should.
Julia.
I know, seriously, best decision I ever made. Was like, hey, let's give this information away for free. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How are we going to do that? And like, trust me. Said, okay, let's do it. Let's experiment with it. And so we did. And so the original vision really was about content creation, selling courses at the end of it, right? And so this was back in 2014. Okay. And so we bought a house. We got married in 2011. I had the idea for the business. I actually registered the domain back in 2008. Okay. So then 2011,
what does a bar above mean? Like, what's the meaning behind it?
There's not a lot of meaning other than the fact that, like, it's a catchy catchphrase, a bar above. Yeah. So, like, raising the bar. That's kind of where it came from. And I'm like, hey, that kind of works, a bar above. Yeah. So that was kind of the idea, is kind of elevating your skills behind the bar from a professional setting. And then we started doing YouTube. And the idea was to create courses to sell.
Elevate people's skills.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so, 2013, we bought our house. The sole purpose of it was to create a bar because in 2013 we were
your set at your house?
It was. Okay. It was in our dining room, and then we moved down to Carlsbad. So this was up in the Bay Area.
Your new set, is it still at your house? That's awesome. Bro.
Yeah, it's
cool. Pretty big.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's a 1-car garage we converted over to a studio. Wow. Yeah. So
did you build it yourself and everything?
So respect on the woodworking.
Yeah, it's good. This is like baby compared to yours though. Like, if you guys take a look at Chris's channel, like, it's a pretty gnarly bar, dude.
Yeah. So we built that when we moved into Southern California, but the original idea was that media company, and so I quit my job and I was making a lot of money in San Francisco. Yeah. I worked in a really nice fine dining we were in the hottest restaurant when we opened. Yeah. It was a place called Wayfair Tavern, and the celebrity chef from Food Network, Tyler Florence, this was his flagship. Wow. So we were busy from the minute we opened until we closed at like 11, and it was nuts, right in the middle of financial district. So it's
a killer spot, dude.
It's ridiculous, dude. It was just absolutely insane. And the place is beautiful. The food is just amazing. And the beverage program was just absolutely nuts. So I started working there when we opened, and it was absolutely crazy. It was 15-step cocktails. Wow. And they were all of them. Wow. So I was like, this sucks.
It sucks. That sucks so bad. Batching wasn't a thing back then.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. So a lot of it was very much like, let's take that idea and like pare it back. Yeah. Let's combine ingredients. Like, let's start doing, this is early batching. Like, let's make it logical sense so that we're not making so many steps. Yeah. Like, this is insane. Like, let's pare this back. And I was a bartender. Yeah. And so I remember the first day I was there, I was shadowing, I was staging. For anybody that doesn't know that term, it's basically you're auditioning for your job. Sure. In a two-way scenario. Do you like the environment you're working in? And do they like you? So it's very much a learning opportunity. So I go in there and we're just jammed up in business, right? 15-step cocktails, 3 people deep. You know, at the time, the equivalent of it would probably be $20 to $25 cocktails. I mean, they were really, really expensive. So the expectation was super high. And we hired these really amazing consultants, and they do such a great job. And they were coming in and kind of telling the bartenders what to do. And I remember that the bartender that I was staging, or literally watching over his shoulder, halfway through his shift, packed his bar tools up and walked out the door. And I looked at the consultants. He looked at me, and I was like, what do I do? He's like, get in a damn well and make the damn cocktails. I'm like, well, shit, I'm hired. So I get in there and I'm rocking out.
He left because he just didn't like it.
He was over it. He's like, this is too hard. I don't want this.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm in. Let's do this thing. He's like, 4 caipirinhas. I'm like, what is that? Damn. And so he walked me through it.
You got to cut your limes. You got to do all the things.
He walked me through it. Wow. And I'm like, well, clearly I got the job.
Yeah.
So then
I love me some good cachaça.
Oh, it's so good. And that is one of those cocktails that is the greater than the sum of its parts. Oh, yeah. Like on a paper, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Then you have it and you're like,
it makes no sense, guys.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It's like just use lime juice. But no, the oils from the lime peels outside, you have to have like clean limes though. Like it could get disgusting if you don't like wash your fruit and stuff.
Yeah, so the process on the caipirinha, I think this is a good thing to talk about, is you put sugar in a glass, then you quarter up a lime and you dump all of it inside that glass, and you grab a muddler and you just bash that lime. And the whole point is literally to pulverize that lime as much as possible, because you want to extract the bitterness from the peels, because the bitterness and the acid is what is offsetting the sugar. It's creating depth, it's creating dimension. And then you pour the spirit, which is like an equivalent or derivative of rum, sugarcane based, into there, cachaça, and then it becomes this magical drink when all of those elements kind of work together. Yeah. And
do you use pebble ice?
We didn't even have pebble ice back then. We didn't even have clear ice back then. Yeah, so this was like way back.
That's so cool. Most bartenders still don't know how to make that drink.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's delicious. It's so good. So yeah, he's like, 4 caipirinhas. He walked me through it, and he's like, okay, you're in for the rest of the service. I was like, let's do this.
Any good bartender now could be a great consultant back then, and you could have made so much money.
Dude, it was insane. There was like a handful of people that could do that.
Yeah,
and they were one of them.
Because like nowadays, I haven't seen many consultants, just because like a lot of bartenders kind of know their stuff.
And that's a hard space to be in. I'll be honest. Yeah. I tried the consulting side, and it's a hard place to be for sure.
How so?
Convincing people of value. Right.
Yeah.
So you roll into a bar or restaurant, and you've worked in bars and restaurants, so you'll probably know this. There's an ego behind the bar. There's an ego in the business.
It's like, I know this is my space.
Right.
Like, don't intrude.
Right. Yeah. So some guy comes in and I'm like, man, I can improve your bar.
Really? No, I don't think you can.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a hard proposition unless you're known, unless you can prove value, and unless you already have clients.
Yeah.
So it's a hard space to be in. And if you're going to go that space, you have to go one of 2 ways, in my opinion. You have to get bars and restaurants right in the beginning to help them build out their restaurant. And if you're going to do that, get your money first. If you're a consultant, get your money.
Yeah. And
if you're not doing that, you really do have to partner up with strategic partners like distributors and have them pay for your services if you can do that. So if you are in the consulting space and you figured it out, good for you. Yeah. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. But if I were going to do it now, that's the approach that I would take.
You kind of hit every spot of the industry, dude.
I've been around. I've been doing a lot of stuff.
So you work at this tavern place, and you said you saved up a lot of money.
Yeah, so I saved up a lot of money. My wife worked at a pharmaceutical company, and so we were making really good money. And so we saved up a ton of money, and the idea was to launch this business, because she comes from an entrepreneurial family. I do as well. And we wanted to kind of break free from the corporate jobs.
Yeah, so, your own boss.
Right, exactly. And so that's kind of what we did. So in 2012, I think, we bought our house with the sole idea of creating this business. So we left.
She was in as well.
Oh, she was 100% in. Yeah. She's like, and she was trying to figure out her own thing. And then we started talking about this, and it just made sense. Yeah. Like, we could both do this together. And that's a whole different story. Yeah. And let's do this.
That's something to do together. It's like two heads are better than one, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then I built the bar. I spent 6 months building the bar, and she spent 6 months learning how to code and build a website and that.
Wait, she learned how to code?
Right. So,
stop it.
Yeah. So that's kind of how this partnership started. So we're like all in.
I'm inspired, dude.
And so during the day, I was tending bar. So I made the transition from night to day.
Yeah.
And so I built up a really, really strong regular base.
Yeah.
And we could talk about building regulars until the cows come home because I was very strategic about it. So I was making as much money in the daytime as I was on a Friday night.
Okay.
Every day.
Every day.
I was killing it.
That's impressive.
I was absolutely killing it.
If you guys don't know too much about bartending, like the Friday, Saturday night shifts are probably the go-to in terms of making money. And Chris is saying that he made just as much money on a daytime shift during the week.
On a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And it really is about being strategic about developing your regulars. So I was working in the day, tending bar in Financial District. And at night, basically every time I had available, I was listening to podcasts. I was building the business. I was thinking about what we were going to produce and how we're going to do it. And really
You're on a mission.
Oh, I was hungry, dude. I was hungry. So both my wife and I were just digesting everything that we could do. So she worked an hour and a half bus ride into the place she was working at. So in that hour and a half, she had Wi-Fi. So she was on there coding and building and doing things. Hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half at night, and then until we went to bed. So we just went hard. Wow. For years we did this. And so in 2014, we decided that, okay, we're doing it. We're launching, we're going. And so the first thing that we did was
the coding and everything, and you learning all the business and stuff. How many years were you planning before the actual launch?
So we had a couple of different business ideas up to this point. Okay. So we were living in San Francisco, and it's funny thinking about this in advance. We had a business that we developed and started to think about called Daily Gourmet, and we were in San Francisco. And the idea was pre-prepped meals delivered to your door.
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily, you weren't all in on cocktails. It was just like a business. You wanted to work for yourselves.
We wanted to work for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so like we started crunching numbers. Actually, my wife did because she's the business like brain of our relationship. And so she started crunching numbers and I was starting building out menus and costing and like doing all the things I knew how to do. And then we started looking at spaces, like food prep spaces. And running the numbers.
Rent's expensive.
And it got more expensive. And it's crazy. So we started crunching the numbers. She's like, in order for us to be profitable, you personally have to make 2,800 meals a day.
Not going to work.
And I'm like, well, that's done. We're done. We're
Throwing it out the window.
Like, even before you hire employee number one, you're done. So we're like, well, that sucks. And so we started looking for other ideas. And then we had this conversation about a bar above going on and on and on and on for a couple of years, I want to say. And so where he said, yep, this is it. We're doing this. We're going to go in on this. And so that's when 2013 hit. we were doing woodworking in our apartment in San Francisco, and our landlord didn't like that.
Oh, for
700 square feet with our own garage.
They would hate it.
Oh, yeah. So they're like, yeah, you can't do that. We're like, yeah. So then that's the reason we bought our house.
Yeah.
And so then we moved out to the East Bay, and we built that set, our early version of our set. And then we just started pumping out content. Yeah. So that was 2013. And then in 2014, we launched our very first digital product, which is now called the Mixology Certification Program. And we thought we were going to make it. We're like, yeah, we're going to make it. Oh, this is it. This is what's going to make it.
Yeah.
And crickets.
Crickets. What do you mean crickets?
Like
5?
We sold one the day of launch.
One.
And then like 10 more, but it wasn't enough to sustain a family.
No, 0.
So we're like, well, that sucks. And so we just kept seeing.
Damn, what was that feeling like?
Like a mix of excitement and terror, if I'm being honest.
Because you worked so hard for that moment.
Right.
And you didn't get the result that you were looking for.
Well, and I think this was something that was also really interesting, especially on that time with an e-commerce space, was everything was about your launch. And launching a product was all about instant success. And all the stories about e-commerce were like, I made so much money in 72 hours. For sure. And so when we launched this and we got like 10 sales, we were like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
So, and we committed. Like it's a 9-week course if you take it at a nice pace. Yeah. And we built that a year. Every week is one section, and we would publish. A week, another section.
And these are all videos that you guys filmed by yourselves in your set, everything like that?
Right, exactly. So it was a heavy lift to make that course. And then the payout wasn't there. And so we're like, uh-oh. And so we started running out of money. But then this is where like...
And this is kind of the nest egg that you saved up to launch the business. Like that's kind of the game plan.
Right.
Like we need this much to like do the thing.
Right.
Did you quit your job at the time or are you still working?
We both quit our jobs.
Both quit?
Yeah, we made the jump into the deep end. July 3rd, 2014.
No, I would remember the date too.
Right. So July 4th, we opened a bottle of champagne with our dog and watched the fireworks of the Golden Gate Bridge. Because that was our 4th of July. That was our Freedom Day.
That's a scary feeling.
Right.
That's so cool.
So we're like, let's do this. And so we ran out of money. And so I had to get a job consulting with a spirits company, a distributor. And this is where one of my regulars came into play. She was kind of the head of Southern Wine and Spirits in San Francisco. And she saw me. She saw how passionate I was. She was my regular.
If you guys don't know what Southern Wine and Spirits is, it's probably the biggest distribution company for spirits
In the country. Easily. Yeah, easily. So she was the head of that division in San Francisco. So she was a bigwig. She was big, and I didn't know that. But I just knew that I liked her. We had a lot of fun, and she saw how hard I worked. So one day when I'm at the gym, I get this message on Facebook from a gentleman by the name of Angus Winchester. And if anybody doesn't know who he is...
That's a cool name.
Right? He's a cool dude, too. But he was a head global ambassador for Tanqueray.
Okay.
So he was OG. So
Tanqueray is like an OG gin, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was like the James Bond of the spirits world.
Really?
He was it. And everybody at that time knew this guy.
Okay.
And he DM'd me out of the blue and says, we need to talk. Your name keeps coming up for this role. Call me. And he gave me his number. So I called him in the gym. And at this point, we probably had about 5 months left in the bank. And we were eating top ramen, and I was making bread from scratch.
Did you have kids yet?
No. This is before. Okay. And this is why we knew we had to do it before kids. So I call him up. And he's like, hey, your name keeps coming up on this role, and I really want to talk to you. And so I did. And it was a consulting role through Diageo, through Diageo, who owns like Bullet. And like they are one of the biggest spirits producer in the world. And your job is going to basically be to help businesses grow, bars and restaurants. I'm like, this is amazing. This is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly what I'm trying to communicate is improving the hospitality business. So I ended
on your own.
Right. But he wanted to hire me in this role.
Sure.
And I had 5 months left of money.
So it sounded great.
Perfect. I'm like, I want to eat. This is awesome. Yeah. We're running out of money.
Yeah.
So I get the job. And for the next 2 years, I'm consulting probably 100 bars and restaurants in the Bay Area. Traveling all over the place. Like, it's insane, the volume of just experience that I got consulting. So...
that's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Every day. 5 days a week. Traveling everywhere. Consulting.
Just in San Francisco?
Yeah, mostly Bay Area, but also a couple in Sacramento, a couple in San Jose. So a ton of experience on the business side. But that role didn't get adopted again. So at the end of 2016 or 2015 going into 2016, they let everybody go. So I was there for 2 years.
Did you learn a lot?
Oh my God, so much.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like the leadership skills in a business side of things I thought I knew a lot, but this was kind of like the same thing about bartending. I didn't know anything. Like getting involved in leadership and consulting and that level and to that level of performance was transformational. And I have nothing but respect for the person that put that program in a place. So kind of fast forward, the end of 2015, we find out the news. 2016 is when our contract ends. Our son was going to be born, our first son, October 2015. So actually, and then our contract was ending October. So I get the news, I'm like, what are we going to do for money?
So is a bar above on the back end right now?
I actually signed a non-disclosure agreement that I could not participate in a bar above. Because that's where they found me. They're like, I don't want people confusing you with what you're doing. And I'm like, I get that. That sucks. So my wife actually ran a bar above for 2 years without me while I was doing this to make money.
Keeping it alive.
Right.
And was it still the courses at the time?
And content and everything. And it was a really frustrating position for her.
Could you still do content or no? You weren't.
I couldn't.
You couldn't do content?
Like my face could not be on YouTube.
So she was doing content of cocktails.
She was doing blog.
Okay.
So she was talking, but she doesn't have the expertise in bartending to have that. So I was still part of the business from a creative standpoint, but she was the one really executing.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions we always got was, what bar tools do we recommend? And at the time, as you know, and that you found out, there wasn't a lot on Amazon. The biggest person in the space at that time had quality tools. They had great stuff. They were making really interesting tools, but their customer service was absolute garbage. So if you bought a tool and it broke, that's on you. Sorry, man, I can't help you.
Yeah.
And frustration set in, and I said, "This sucks. You are a bar tool company that is based in hospitality. That the people that buy from you are in hospitality, and you have zero interest in being hospitable. That sucks." So after hearing this for 2 years, my wife was like, "What would your perfect cocktail shaker look like?" And I'm like, "Oh, I got you." Boom, 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 boom. And she's like, "Okay, let's fix it." And so we put an order out to China back in 2015.
How do you even start?
Alibaba was where we started at the time. So we put a quote out, and we got this cocktail shaker that I'm holding here that we talked about earlier in my hand. And we sold the entire thing in 30 days, in 120-day lead time. So we're like, we're starving. Our son's going to be born in a month. My insurance is going to run out before he's delivered. We're screwed. So we got some success in, I think it was August. And so we just started pouring our efforts into making bar tools. So that's kind of what started it was, how can we make money? This was the need. This was what really started.
So it was kind of on an accident.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because we decided that we had many conversations like, I don't want to do physical goods.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
So, and that was a conversation until it wasn't a conversation anymore.
You're like, people have a desire for this.
Right. And so like the conversation we had earlier, like me breaking every tool there is to break behind a bar, I knew where all those failure points are. And my wife was like, "I'm tired of hearing you bitch about your tools every night.
Let's make it.
Let's figure it out."
Yeah.
And so that's what we did.
What makes a bar above cocktail shaker different or better than other ones?
So whenever we develop tools, and this is the same thing with mixing drinks and creating cocktails and creating a cocktail menu, I think about the customer, the end customer that's going to consume this product, right? So my form of customer service is making a durable cocktail piece of hardware that's not going to break on you on a Friday night, right?
This includes, you're thinking about inside a bar.
Everything.
You're not thinking about at home. What do you think
we
about?
started with industry, and we've transitioned a little bit more to at home. But that's always at the forefront. What are the failure points? How can I fix that? Or what capabilities can I add? So when we started taking a look at the cocktail shakers, we actually offer two. This is a weighted, unweighted. So for the Boston shaker that we talked about earlier, the large portion has a weight on the bottom of it. The small portion does not have that weight. And this was very on purpose, and we're the first person to bring this to the market. So from my experience, the reason we chose this format instead of the more traditional weighted was because when we are making egg white cocktails and you're using a weighted shaker, both sides are very rigid.
Yeah, if you guys look at the shakers in the back, you see that there's a little, you could go ahead and get it.
Let me grab it.
If you guys could see, there's a weight at the bottom over here, and I actually don't know the purpose. So you could explain it.
So there's a couple different purposes. One, for flair, it adds balance.
Okay.
Right? So it has predictable kind of handling when you're doing this. But when you're talking about cocktail shakers, from my perspective, this adds rigidity to the whole structure. So this makes this very hard to bend. When you don't have the weight,
it bends easily.
It makes it a lot more flexible.
Yep.
And this is really important when we start making egg whites, because when you shake egg white cocktails, they're
Which
gas and
less
pressure.
and less popular.
I know. The pressure starts to build up inside of your tin, and they break. The seal breaks, and all of a sudden you have egg whites all over your hands.
All over.
All over your shirt.
Disgusting.
And it's super frustrating.
Yeah.
So when you have a weighted, unweighted, this has more flex to it. So it conforms to the weighted side, and it creates a tighter seal. So it doesn't open up under pressure. So when we
I've never heard anyone talk about cocktail shakers like this.
And we're the first person to do it, and we're the only ones that know why. Because this is what I experienced behind the bar, changing out my tools, trying different things.
So basically, one side's unweighted.
Right. So we had a lot of success, and we were the first company on Amazon that actually had a matching set. So it was kind of like shooting fish in a barrel at that point, to your experience. So
this is the one that I have.
Yep. So when we launched this one, I sent it out to a friend of mine that did high volume in Miami, and he sent it back to me a year ago, and he said it finally failed. So he told me that it made about 100,000 cocktails before the unweighted portion of it failed, and the metal just kind of gave out.
That's so sick.
And if it was the original, if it had the weighted, he'd still be using it to this day. He bought 8 sets. He's still working 7.
Wow.
This is the one that broke.
Wow.
So we really focus on quality. So when we talk about cocktail shakers, I'll just kind of demonstrate here for you. Typically when you see the weight attached to the shaker here, you'll see 3 spots on the bottom of it. And those are simple tack welds. And that's the only thing holding that weight to the bottom of the shaker. And when that weight fails, what is underneath is unpolished metal, and it's usually rusty because water gets in there and it's super gross. So you have to throw it away. So what we do is we actually weld all the way around. It is a seal that, and you can't even see it. And there's always a secret to our tools that you just can't see. So
when you have these designed, I guess when you're at, do you tell them the process that you want of how to make it?
Right.
Okay.
And I kind of designed the ultimate tool that I would want when I was tending bar and going from there. So like our tools may look like other people's tools from a listing on Amazon, from a website, but I guarantee you when you put it in your hands, there is something different about the tools that we make because we take it so seriously. Like if this were to fail on you on a Friday night, I would feel let down. And so we really focus on quality and durability.
I actually like the size a lot. I think the last bar that I worked at was the favorite bar that I've ever attended bar at. And there was a few things that I didn't like about it though, in terms of tools, right? One of them was the shakers. They were way too big and they were like way too stiff.
Right.
Like, and they didn't have any flex at all.
Right.
Like 0 flex. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't open it. Like my hands barely fit it versus like I used the Cocktail Kingdom shaker at my previous bar and those were more flimsy, but those rusted more. And I was just like, why can't we get like good equipment? Right. And then the second one was an ice scoop. Depending on the size of the ice, you need a scoop that could fit the ice. Right. And so like we'd have these tiny scoops at my last bar that I worked at that just like you couldn't pick up anything. Right. And I was like, do I need to bring my own scoops? Because like this doesn't work. It could to be faster. Right. And I don't know why the managers don't think about that. Right. Because it could speed up the process way more. Right.
And so when you think about the business side of these things, the value of the tools that you're using really does come into play. Right. All these little things really add up, and the more cocktails you can make in the same amount of time, the more money you can make. So there's a lot of value on that. And so I think there's a lot to be said about really good tools. Like any other profession, if you are taking it seriously, you invest in your tools, right? Woodworking, anything, graphic design. It's all about investing in the tools. And so there wasn't anybody making quality tools at the time that also had really good customer service. So that was our angle. Like we're going to make...
Were you the customer service?
I was the customer service until we could hire somebody.
Okay.
Actually, my wife did a lot of it as well.
So you got a team now and everything?
So we've built the company up to a team, and we continue to grow every single day. That's awesome. Yeah, we just hired somebody today.
Do you have I don't know, not a storage unit, like a warehouse or something that has all the units?
So we have a storage unit we have what is called a 3PL, so third-party logistics that's based out in Kansas City. Okay. Really lovely husband and wife team that have had that storage unit for many, many generations. So they fulfill all of our stuff. They send all of our stuff to Amazon. All of our product is centered in Kansas City and then gets distributed, because it's dead center of the country, we can hit both coasts in 3 days. So that's part of that business growth that we talked about earlier.
How did you learn all this business stuff? Because like me, I'm like baby business. Like I'm like a couple years in, and I'm learning like P&L sheets. I'm learning Excel. I'm learning all these things, and it's a lot, dude.
It is.
It's a lot, and it's kind of overwhelming. And I'm just like, when you're talking about this, I'm like, yo, it sounds so easy. Like,
it's not. Yeah. I mean, and this is part of that early conversation that we had about growing businesses and going through phases. Yeah. Like in the beginning, I was unloading trucks. I had to learn how to do a forklift because that's what we were at the time. And we were finding the cheapest storage unit that we could operate in. Yeah. And I have pictures of my son, like in my lap, driving a forklift. Wow. And so you just go through these phases. And as you go through these phases, the skills that you need to develop are different, right? So in the beginning, it's all about hustle. It's all about executing, just getting volume of work done in a strategic manner to growth. Once you start getting income, you can start replacing yourself in the things that you can't do well. And I think, hiring people that are better than you at what you're hiring them to do and trusting them and giving them clear direction. Yeah. I'm not the best at it.
How do you find those people?
It's a process. And and the person that you hire in the beginning is not the person that's going to get you to a $10 million company. And this was a really hard revelation that we've had to have through consultants and people that we have hired is person A probably won't be with you when you start your when you get to the point where you want your company. So you just have to evolve, and the people that you need are going to change. The hats they have to wear are going to change. And my wife is primarily the person that does our logistics and operations.
That's awesome.
On a day-to-day basis. So my focus is, so hats off to her. She runs an amazing company, and she's been very thoughtful. So we have a significant competitive advantage when we hire people. So the way she has designed it is we hire completely remote. You don't have to be in
here.
our general direct area.
That's awesome.
To work for us, because we are an online e-commerce company. There are some critical parts of our business that have to be local, but for the most part, we hire no matter where we are. So we have a pretty significant team that we've hired in Mexico.
Like out of state,
out of the country. Right. And we started hiring people in the Philippines, in China. And we realized that lag time and time difference sucks.
Helps.
It sucks. Because you have asynchronous communication. Like I'll send somebody out to send a mail or email out to somebody in the Philippines. They're asleep. So they can't respond immediately.
So I have the opposite problem of I hired someone in the Philippines for editing.
Sure.
And it works okay for me because I'll wake up and my edit will be done. Because he's working when I'm sleeping.
And it's great. But if you have things that need to get done in a timely manner,
like quick at a certain time, you have to be up at the same time.
And so for us, we didn't want people to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning answering our emails. So we went through that phase of our company where we hired a lot of people in the Philippines, and it was great for our company. We had wonderful people that worked for us. And when that became a bottleneck, we had to transition, and my wife started sourcing help locally and in Mexico, and that has been an absolute game changer. The other thing that is really interesting about our company,
how do they find you?
We find them.
How do you find them?
So we go on Indeed. Hire through there. Indeed.com in Mexico exists.
Really?
So we post.
That's so cool.
And then in English. So we're already setting up filters. And we have an entire hiring process. Like it is intense. So if you want to work for a bar above, it's probably a 2 to 3 month process.
Wow.
Interviews, filters, and we actively want to push people away.
Because you want to find the creme.
We want to find the one.
The cream of the crop.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have. And so the other thing that makes us very attractive from a employee perspective and people that want to work for us is my wife had this brilliant idea of a 30-hour work week.
I saw that. And I was like,
and that's a maximum.
That's insane.
Right. And you get full benefits.
Wow.
At 30 hours a week. And we have a really flexible work schedule of the only thing that we require, and that's very loose, is that you're online between 9 and 12, Monday through Friday.
9 a.m.
to noon.
9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Right.
9,
so
10,
that's
11.
15 hours.
Oh, okay.
All the other hours you do whenever you see fit.
You just have to be online.
You have to be able to have communication between 9 and 12. And if you get your job done at 11 o'clock at night, that's on you. You're an adult. This is the goal. This is your role. Figure it out.
That's a brilliant.
And it's amazing. Yeah. And so we are able to hire people higher than we can pay.
Yeah.
Because of that flexibility. So we have people that work from Amsterdam. They go on vacation. They work in Amsterdam. They go on vacation. They work from Morocco. They go on vacation. They work from Paris. Dang. So we are able to unlock this lifestyle, still working for a company that fulfills them. And you can't get that.
You can't get that because then it also allows you to pay a little bit less.
Right.
Than their value.
Right.
Per se.
So we pay according to that price as well. So we hire people and then we say, okay, this is these are the hours. This is the pay.
Yeah.
And they're like, cool, I'm down. Let's do this.
How long did it take to get to a place where like the business is sustaining itself? You're like, whoa, this is working. You were like, we did the thing. Like we had the idea of a bar above. Like it failed for a little bit. Like I had to do the consulting job for 2 years, and then you come back to it. You sold out, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah. So that took us probably 2013, 2015, 16. So that took us about 3 years.
3 years.
But in general, when you're talking about business, there is a lore, an adage, whatever you want to name it, that you're going to start making money in 5 years. You just got to hustle that hard for 5 years. And that was kind of our experience as well. And so when we talk about instant successes, they're a long time in the making. They take a long time to develop because you just got to get the miles in.
Yeah.
So
you got to get the reps.
You got to get the reps. You got to grow your company. You got to build the infrastructure. And then at that point, If everything else lines up, then you go. And that's kind of where we are at our phase. Is
Right now?
we've lined up that infrastructure and we have the capabilities now of hitting it hard. And so that's kind of the focus that we're
So
gonna go after.
what's hitting it hard? What's that path look like right now?
So the path right now looks like reaching into distributors like Cisco's and stuff like that, getting into bars and restaurants,
Like
at the ground floor.
getting like all the equipment in it.
Yeah. So just hitting every bar and restaurant that we can hit, providing great tools, providing great education, providing great customer service, and just developing new, cool, awesome bar tools.
Well, the thing about, I guess, like physical products is they speak for themselves, right?
Right.
Like if you have a great product, you don't need to sell it.
Right.
Right. You don't need to sell it at all. Like if you have someone uses your tins, they're like, whoa.
Right.
Like,
and so one of my favorite things to do whenever I go into a bar or restaurant, and I'm kind of pitching bar tools, and I don't do this very much anymore. If I see a competitor jigger on the rail, I'm like, do me a favor. I have this tool. I'm going to give it to you. Show me what you have, what you're working with. And so they bring it out, and I show them the differences, and I put the tool in their hand. They're not picking up that other tool ever again.
Yeah.
That's it. They're like, I'm done. This is it. This is the only jigger I'm ever going to use.
What's your preference of jigger?
It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going volume, if I'm going speed, Japanese jiggers are hard to beat.
Yeah.
If I'm going for like comfort, if I'm making cocktails at home, the bell jiggers are just sick.
So yeah, I had I used the bell jigger 2 bartending jobs ago, and it would always like it like flow out like quickly because like you're like, whoa, like why you're wasting a lot of alcohol over here.
Right. So the differences between the two is imagine Japanese jiggers is a steep V in the cone shape, right? And so it grabs onto that alcohol a lot easier, and it gives it less space to kind of flop out the other side. When you're using a bell jigger, it's more of a U. So it could do that kind of like Wile E. Coyote effect of like jumping right out the other side.
Jumping right out.
So that's why I said if I'm at home and I want that aesthetic ritual feeling of making a cocktail, I go for my bell jigger.
It feels good. It feels good. I don't know. I can't really describe it.
When you put it between your fingers, the shape of the outside of the bell just curves perfectly to the fingers. So it just rests. And the weight of it is just super cool. But the Japanese jiggers, if I'm going for volume, if I just need to execute, I'm going to go Japanese jiggers. Personally, that's the way I go.
You could pitch all of these, bro.
Right.
I'm excited. So, do you want to talk a little bit about all the new equipment? Because I haven't seen a mallet in a long time.
Yeah. So we are. So you asked me kind of like what we're into, and I just finished this cocktail, and it's delicious.
I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you got to drink a cocktail. I know you don't drink much. I feel very privileged.
No. The privilege is mine. That was fantastic. So. But when we talk about bar tools, I think our path of growth is releasing new novel bar tools. Like so one of the things
you can make new ones.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So or like
do you have
really
new
cool,
ones?
Yes.
Okay.
So we
that have not been invented before. Oh, I'm excited.
So I don't have any here, but we can kind of talk about some of the other ones we do.
Yeah.
So whenever we think about bar tools, obviously we talked about durability, we talked about longevity, and I think about that with every tool that we design. So anytime you pick up on a bar above tool, there's a secret about that tool that you probably don't see.
Okay.
But makes a huge difference in longevity and durability. So we talked about the shakers here, but like the jiggers that we have are solid welded all the way around. So the Japanese jigger, the V, there's 2 Vs, a big kind of narrow V and a little bit smaller, wider V. And each side is different amounts. So the wide, short V is for a 1 ounce pour. The tall, slender V is a 2 ounce pour. So on that jigger, the wide, short V has every 1/4 ounce measurement up to 1 ounce. So 1/4 ounce.
A lot of Japanese jiggers, guys, they don't have the 1/4 ounce.
Right. And so that's not the only thing. We actually just made it with a bar spoon measure as well. So if anybody that's into the world of cocktails knows that measurement is kind of like not really standard, but there is a standard to it.
Okay. What is it? I don't know.
I think it's, I'll have to refresh. It's either 2.5 mils or 5 mils. But it is like if you go to a European bartending school, it is a standard unit of measurement that doesn't exist in the world of bars.
Okay, European bartending schools do it different.
They do it different.
I see the Amsterdam bartending schools and all like it's especially like Flair too. They got like wells set up all over the place. Like it's a system.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's admirable. I was thinking about going to an Amsterdam bartending school just to take their Flair course like end of the year. And I'm like, I've never seen anything like it. I just see it on social media.
Yeah, flare in Europe is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's not that big here.
No, it's not.
Compared to over there.
Right, but man, when you see somebody that can execute flare, it is mesmerizing.
Effortlessly, and then also their free pour is on the dot.
Right. And it's part of their competition.
Yeah.
Is getting it as close to the actual unit as possible. So when we talk about like our tools, once again, they are tack welded. So if you look at the bottom of that, both jiggers, inside of it, there's 3 dots, and those are tack welds, just like the weight on the bartender shakers. And that is the only thing holding it together. In the middle, there is a band of metal, and it's merely cosmetic. It's just hiding the seam. So if you're in the middle of service and you push down on that seam, it's going to pop.
Wow.
6 months in, a year in, it's just going to pop in your hands. Or if you twist it, it's going to fracture that weld, and you're holding both of them in your hand. So with ours, we actually weld that metal all the way around. So it's not going to pop off on you. The measurements that we have in there are within the tightest tolerances I've ever seen. If they don't hit the tolerances, we don't pay for them. Wow. We say, make them again. And so we take design of bar tools very, very seriously. Now, when we talk about new things, even like the cosmetic stuff that we look at here with the cocktail shakers, these are colored. So there's 4 different colors that we have. We have the standard stainless steel, which is just purely stainless steel. We have the anti-copper, which is in the middle. We have the black that we just launched, and we have the gold. And have you used colored tools behind your bar before, or strictly stainless?
I have the gold one, and they ended up getting rusty pretty quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
So with traditional bar tools, and most of them that you see on the marketplace, the coating process they use is they do nickel on top of the stainless, and they do the color on top of that, so copper. But on top of that, they put plastic coating on the outside of it. And when that copper coating fails because of dishwasher and detergents and stuff, then it rusts. Then the Moscow mules that we all had that started falling apart and they look gross, that's what happens.
Super gross.
You have to throw them away.
You have to, or else you're going to get people sick.
Right, exactly. So we have a completely different coating process. So these are all dishwasher safe.
Which is crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
So
especially colored.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it's high temp, you're good to go. If it is a low temp, high chemical, then it's going to eat away the finish immediately. But what you're going to be left with is stainless steel underneath it.
Okay.
So, excuse me. Even when it starts to age and the patina starts to show, what's going to show is the stainless steel underneath it.
Okay.
So even this is stuff that we think about, and we're investigating some new coating processes.
Might look cool when patina starts. Yeah, have you seen it yet? Have you tested it out?
I have a couple.
You have a couple?
Yeah, and it looks good.
It would be interesting to see what it looks like, because usually when that stuff gets old, it kind of doesn't look good and you would throw it away.
Right.
But there's certain things that get better with age.
Right. And so this will show that age, that patina. It's going to show the stainless steel underneath. So you're going to get this two-tone metal effect. And it shows that I'm using my tools every single day.
Yeah.
So we think about all this stuff when it comes to tools. Now, development and growing the company, we found that launching new tools is kind of the best base for us. And there's no shortage of tools that we can develop. I think in 2003, I started putting a list together of all the tools that are possible for us to kind of launch and investigate. And I think the list was somewhere around 200.
What?
So last year, I think we launched about 20. So we're just continuing to launch. And once again, looking through the lens of tool development as customer service. High quality, high durability, increased performance, all those things. So
I'm excited for you, dude.
Yeah, it's super cool. So even this mallet, there's a lot of function in this mallet that you're not going to see. It's a really cool aesthetic looking mallet. But there are things that
love the wood.
Thank you.
Love the wood.
I have an acacia one I want to give you. I didn't bring it.
Oh,
but
it's
good,
dude.
Gorgeous. So dark wood like walnut, but you have these light streaks in it. I'm going to send one to you.
Please.
But even the shape of this and the weight of this and the balance point of it is something that we thought about. This strap that holds it together is a safety strap. It's leather, but this is a bolt that goes up here, and we've glued it into the handle. So that way, if this thing ever breaks, this is a safety function. But even the handle, if you have small hands, you grab it here. If you have big hands, you go around here. So the palm swell really kind of takes all that into account. And then even on the head, if you see here, you have these kind of offsets.
What's that for?
So this is for when you're chipping ice. If it was straight, it would blow out. and so it
Oh,
would start
it
to
would break.
peel out. It would break.
Break.
So wood would start peeling out.
Okay, how do you think about this? Like, what's your process? Just
So-
trial and error?
A little bit of it, but I have a pretty strong woodworking background.
Okay.
So making the bars, one of the things we did for our wedding is we wanted a 3-month ceremony, but it got pushed out to a year. So we made our own furniture for the wedding.
Wow.
So this is a whole nother story. It's pretty cool.
So
And
cool, dude.
This is what got me excited. I knew I wanted to marry her, but when she threw this idea out, I'm like, this is gonna be fun. We're gonna have so much fun. So, so we started making our own furniture for the wedding, and we converted her parents' asphalt driveway up in Napa into a French bistro. Wow. We made our own lights. We made our own tables. We got after it. So that's where my woodworking skills started.
So cool.
I did our cabinets in our house. We retrofitted the entire house. I built the bar. So I have a strong woodworking background. So like wood is very familiar to me.
Yeah.
I know where the points of failure are going to be.
Yeah.
So we designed that into the tool.
Is it pure wood? Is there's
100% wood, except for the metal strap and the leather.
Okay.
So, so traditionally what you'll see is this big knob on the top of
Yep.
it right here.
100%.
And that is to create a wedge to make this thing stick. So it
Stick
won't come
down.
flying off. Right.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that here in a second. But on the top you have chisel, like a really sharp edge. And this is for precision work. So if you're cutting across a line on ice,
Yeah.
you use that. If you're smashing the hell out of it, you use that giant face of it, and then the sides won't blow out.
I'm excited to use this, dude.
And then instead of that big knob holding this thing together, what I've done is actually pinned it. I've gone 3/4 of the way through the wood and added a wood dowel right into the side of it. So that is going to hold this in, and the whole thing is glued. So this thing is never going to come off in your hand. So the one kind of final
Is this
detail,
launched yet?
Yeah, we just launched this last year, I believe.
Okay.
Is when you put it on surface,
Russ.
this doesn't hit the bottom. So when you have your hand in here, you're not crushing your hand on a surface, because if it was like that, your knuckles are going to get beat up, or if it's even more of an angle.
Yeah.
So like every facet of this tool, we've really thought about from a user perspective.
Yeah.
Like more so than anybody would ever know. But this is what we do
Well, it's
with
fascinating the
every
way you
tool.
talk about it, because like I haven't thought about that.
Right.
The thing is, like, I would like, if I used the tool, I probably would like it, and I would just say like, oh, sick, I like it,
Right.
and I would just continue to use it.
Right.
Like there's certain things, like, I don't know, Nike's really good at it.
Yeah.
Their shoes. No one knows about like the science behind the shoe, or like how each step happens, and like why you feel a certain way, why your foot's comfortable the entire time, why I like lifting weights in this Nike shoe versus a different one. But I choose to use Nike Metcon for every single time I do Olympic lifting.
Right.
And I continue to because I just like it.
Right.
But there's probably a whole process. Like I read Phil Knight's book, Shoe Dog, and the amount of tests that they go through and the little details allow you to just have that feeling.
Right. And I don't want you to think about the tool.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I want to take away from your attention for the guests.
But you do think about it when it breaks.
Right. And so I never want that to be a part of your process when you handle our tools.
Yeah.
I want them to just feel good.
Yeah.
And I want them to work, and I want them to last.
Yeah.
So that is the angle that we always take. So like even like the minute details of every single tool we deal with is the same. So this is to use in combination with a Lewis bag. And if you want to grab that, I'll kind of show you some of the intricacies of this. So this was 6 months to 9 months in the making. And a Lewis bag, for anybody that doesn't know it, is a fabric bag that you add ice to in order to crush it. And it has a couple of functions. First of all, the canvas wicks away the moisture. So when the ice melts, it doesn't get wet. It stays dry because the cotton in the canvas is wicking that moisture away. But usually what you see...
For the bartenders out here who have done like stuff at home, like and used like regular bags, it's been a mess.
It's a hot mess.
Hot mess. Like I've done it outside where like just the bag just rips and ice is all over the floor, and I'm just like, oh.
Right. And so like it's just you want it to be a pleasurable experience, and especially if you're going to give this to a gift, you want to make sure that it's good.
Yeah.
Right. So like the density of the fabric, we went through many iterations.
Yeah.
So I learned a whole language around cotton and canvas and weights and stuff like that. But from the functional standpoint, it's just a giant bag.
Just a giant bag.
And I don't want it like with a Lewis bags on there, they make 1 to 2 cocktails.
Okay.
But for a volume bartender, that doesn't make sense. You're probably not going to use this tool if you're a volume bartender. But if you're making stuff at home, you're probably going to want to make it for a large group. So this will hold like 3 or 4 cocktails. So the volume of the bag is huge. You have
It's pretty good. 3 to 4 is pretty good.
Right. And so you could actually entertain with this thing. It has a loop on the bottom for drying, and it has a loop on the top for holding your ice. So you can crush all your ice.
And then hold it.
Stick this in your well, and it will just drip in your well, and the ice will be ready for service. But not only that, we've included this giant leather strap or a Velcro strap. So you don't have to have your hands in the way when you crush.
Yeah.
Now, the secret of our Lewis bags is the seam here. So many of the times you'll see it, the point of failure in these bags are the fabric. So we have a really dense fabric, and then the seams pop. So we've covered the entire seam with a non-woven fabric. So that way particles don't get into your cocktails and the seam won't break. We reinforce the living hell out of that seam.
That's
so
cool.
you could probably give this tool to your kid when you're done with it.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
Well, the biggest thing too, like a lot of bars and stuff, they feel like they need to have different types of ice machines and everything like that, and that could be a problem to like solve because like those ice machines are expensive
and they break
all the time.
Worst times, man.
The bar that I was just at, they just opened less than 8 months ago. Probably broken 6-7 times.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just like, this is brand new.
It's insane.
Why is it breaking?
Yeah, it's incredible. So yeah, it's maybe we'll make ice machines in the future.
Dude, at this rate, I feel like you can. The attention to details, something I've never seen before.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it's something that we don't really communicate. It's kind of the secret of our tools. Is like there's so much about the tools that you have in your hand that you're never going to notice, and that's the point.
Yeah, I guess taking it back a little bit, what gave you the confidence to do this? Because if you think about it, there's a lot of companies out there who make bar tools, right? And like, obviously, you had ideas that you thought or believed that would make it better,
right?
But like, it's a tough space to get into, like kind of with anything,
right?
You know.
And I'll tell you tomorrow when I figure it out. But I think when we think about the bar tool companies, they're run by people that don't know our space, right? They are not bartenders. So already when I start to develop tools, I'm at a huge competitive advantage, right? Like I know the points of failure in tools. We make the tools that other companies won't make because of a price perspective. And it's a hard thing for us to communicate when you see a listing on Amazon. Like, yeah, this one's $25 for a shaker, $22 for a shaker, but I can get one for $8. I'm probably going to get the $8 one, right? But when we talk about quality and we talk about, service and commercial and like customer service and all these things, then that's
the only reason why I bought this shaker is because of the reviews.
Yeah, and I think
they were stellar.
Most of our tools, if I took a survey across the entire, all the products we offer, I think we're like 4.7 stars,
which is great
for like a lot of reviews.
Yeah.
So we're really proud of that.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
How do you feel about social media bartending? Because it's blown up, right? And there's people making money off of it now.
I give them so much props, man. I do. Like I get it. Like get after it, make your money, do your thing. And I think from my perspective, like being in the education space and really trying to get people excited about cocktails, I welcome it. I think it's great. Yeah. The more people that get in the space, the better, right? Yeah. The more experimentation, the more boundary pushing we do, the more accepting we are and everything. That's cool. Like, let's celebrate that. Yeah. Like, this is a fun space to be in.
Yeah. Because, like, you could get uber creative with it, especially at home, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is to kind of put that frustration that I experienced on other people in different spaces. So if somebody's putting whipped cream and confetti sugar cocktails together,
Parmesan on their espresso martini.
I just did that the other day, dude.
Is it good? Was it good?
No, it was not good.
Okay.
But we did it more of a kind of like a gag reel for one of our new tools.
Okay.
But like honestly, like if that's what you're into, and if it gets demand and gets eyeballs on you, like go for it.
The rice and the Negronis and stuff. So the science behind it makes sense though.
Right. Yeah. You're adding the starch in there. It's kind of cutting off the sharp edges.
Yeah. But like, in my head, I'm like, this is bullshit.
Well, I mean, but the same thing with clarified milk punches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they're good.
Yeah. They're good. They're good.
Right. Yeah. So if like, and this is where I get excited. Like I never would have thought of that. Never. But somebody else did. And I'm like, cool. I can't wait to try that.
Oh, it's in the rice is in some old cocktail books. I've seen it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
there's a lot of stuff in those cocktail books I wouldn't try. But I'm glad some other people are.
Yeah. The punches. There's some weird punches.
Well, in like when we look at some of the pharmacy books from back in the day where we pulled a lot of our technique from, there's a lot of stuff now back in the 1800s that would kill you or be poison. Or so like when people are looking back in time at those recipes and some of the ingredients that we're working with, really, really, really have to do your due diligence
and research on it
and modernize it and make sure that it's not going to hurt somebody. Because there's been many stories about people doing that, making your own tonic.
Yeah.
Like you could really hurt somebody.
Yeah.
So it's no joke.
Yeah.
So
there's something about I love the TikTok space for it.
Yeah.
But then also it's like you don't understand the weeds, the cleaning up, the proper technique behind a bar. Like all those are special to me.
Right.
You know?
And that's the world of bar.
Yeah.
And that is and it's funny to me, and I hate to use this word, but it's almost like a brotherhood, right? Like when I talk to a bartender and we talk the same language.
Sure.
Right? And it's funny because like I try not to cuss on social media and the stuff that we do. But if I'm giving a presentation or if I'm talking to a room of bartenders and I drop the F-bomb, everybody's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
It's kind of like, oh, this guy gets it. This guy's one of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've had similar experiences.
Yeah.
We have a similar language of getting beat up, of like going
You
through
go to war
some
together.
stuff. You
go
really
to war
do.
together. Yeah.
And it might not be side by side, but we're all in the same space, right? We've all experienced in the hard lessons that we have to learn in hospitality. Yeah. So it really excites me to be a part of this space, and it's something I love. I love hospitality more than anything else. More than cocktail creation, more than tool design. Supporting our industry is what we are founded on. Yeah. Like we love that.
Yeah.
So
what we're founded on, hospitality.
We are founded on hospitality.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. There's something about just helping people, making other people have a better experience in life. That's kind of like just what makes our life worth living more.
Yeah.
You know, just like it's kind of selfish in a sense.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty
And
good.
you're doing that now through the type of bar tools and like the education and everything like that.
Yeah.
Are you more, what are you most excited for in your life right now?
Oh man, so many things. I think, you know what, our family's grown. So we have 2 boys, 5 and 7. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
And they're amazing. They're so creative and so great. And like a lot of my attention is going to the family and like growing that. The people that we hire, we have.
What's it like being a dad while running a business?
It's hard. It's hard, man. Like, you know, I think the hardest thing we ever did was have a business and a family at the same time. But I'm super glad that we started the business before kids, because I'm not sure we would ever done it after kids. Yeah. So that was a very purposeful decision that we made.
Okay. So that was planned.
That was planned.
You're like, I don't. The people who do it while having kids, I'm like, are you a superhero?
It's insane. Like, well, and the other thing is like, until I had a family, I thought I was productive. But you take 7 hours out of my day away from me, I'm gonna kill some stuff when I get a chance to. Like
uber productive.
Like just like you don't have those filters on the email. It's all about action. It's all about moving forward. So like, you know, you have 3 hours of like work. You're gonna get after it.
You can get after it.
And the execution, the efficiency of it really took a whole another step.
How do you treat prioritization of tasks in a business? Because like when you're starting a business or when you're running a business, you have a ton of tasks to do. Like you always have something to do. If it's website, if it's product design, if it's anything X, Y, and Z, and you just have this like to-do list of things to do. And you're like, where do I start?
Right. And so we had our company meeting in January, and my wife, the business leader in our organization, came up with a really cool philosophy, and I think she got it from a book, and I don't know which one it was, but to sort your tasks in 3 different buckets. Boulders, rocks, and sand. Okay. And the boulders are the things that's going to make the most movement in your company, in your professional life, whatever that is. The sand is a minutia that we get bogged down in day to day. So focusing on the boulders, getting the sand out of the way, and then the rocks are just stuff that gets closer to the boulders.
Oh,
right?
I like that.
So it is about kind of prioritizing some of those
because
elements.
if everyone could treat those tasks as boulders, rocks, and sand, everything runs better. Right,
exactly. And prioritizing your take on it. So like I said, this was happening in January. It's towards the end of February now, so we'll see what happens from that perspective. But I think it really puts a good filter set on your tasks. Like everybody says I've had a busy day, right? No matter everybody. But what happens at the end of that day? When you look upon that and saying what you got mired down into and when you got stuck into, it's easy to focus on the little things and put a lot of weight onto it, right? But if we think about the big things and really focus our efforts there while still getting the sand done, that's where the traction starts to happen.
Yeah.
So
Heck yeah.
No.
Before we close, I was curious. You said we could talk about you not being Hawaiian later.
Oh yeah. So this is a really funny conversation, and I've been very blessed because I have a lot of different heritage. So for anybody that is guessing, yourself included, my background is American Indian.
Okay.
And from my dad's side, and my mother is Okinawan, Japanese.
Okay.
So when I've only met one other person that has that exact same makeup in my life. And what is funny, when I was working in that high volume place in San Francisco, I had a Yelp review that I saw, and they obviously very glowing and very happy, and they were kind of like saying all the cool things that they experienced in the bar that they were sitting at. And then my name came up, and he said, "Oh yeah, if you're ever in this place, ask for Chris. He's the one that is ambiguously ethnic."
He's like, I couldn't guess.
So they couldn't guess. Yeah. And it has been such a superpower for me whenever I travel.
Yeah.
So I look like a lot of different...
Oh, it's intriguing, bro.
It's crazy, right? And so...
Well, especially the facial hair part, because like a lot of... I have a decent facial hair for an Asian guy.
Mine's thick.
Yeah, yours is thick. Like, it's impressive. I'm like, dang, bro, I need some of that.
So whenever we travel, I get mistaken for whatever the minority is in that area. Yeah. So like if we're in New York, everybody assumes I'm Puerto Rican. Yeah. When we're in Miami, everybody thinks I'm Cuban. Yeah. When I'm in LA, everybody thinks I'm Mexican.
Do you travel a lot for the business?
We not for the more and more so these days, but we did a lot of traveling in general before we started the business.
Okay.
So like we would, I remember when we were up in, I was living in Napa. A Farsi guy came up to me in the store and started speaking Farsi, and I was like, man, that's the coolest language. And I was like, dude, I wish I could speak to you. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, it's good, man. So whatever that minority is in that area, people just assume I am that.
Okay. So that's cool. It's a superpower. Dude.
It is. Yeah. It's cool. And so it breaks down a lot of barriers.
Yeah. Because they feel comfortable.
They do. Like you are me.
Yeah.
We are the same.
Sure.
So it really has helped just from like developing relationships and talking to people.
Because same with me too. A lot of people when I'm tending behind bar, they're like, "What are you?"
Right.
And it's a good conversation starter
it
too.
Is. Yeah.
You know. And I'm just like, well, guess.
Right. And it's a fun topic.
It's a fun topic. You'll go back and forth. They're like, wow.
Right.
You know.
And you can be playful with it. You can kind of You're like, oh man, that's racist. So like just have some levity with it and just really engage in conversation. But that's a fun thing that we kind of embrace inside of the house, and our boys are very diverse. Like my wife is English Italian.
I know.
And so it's just
they got massive
people. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, Chris, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Where can everyone get your bar tools, if they want, actually, before we close, if someone wants to be a bartender, where do they start?
So
besides getting their bar kit from a bar buff.
Well, and I think it really is just get in there. Like you mentioned academies and bartending schools, and I think it's a good place to start to get a basis of education and really understand kind of what you're about to walk into. But to your point that you made earlier, there's no substitute of just getting a job. Like get aggressive, know what you want, get after it. And if that means doing something similar to what I did, of like, I don't care where I start, I will scrub your floors. But I want you to know, and for us to have this conversation, I want to be a bartender, and I want it to happen in this amount of time. Like, be aggressive about what you want and ask for what you want. And this kind of really goes through your entire career, but that is a great way to start. Like, watch some videos. There's a lot of great YouTube channels out there, but really focus on learning hospitality, not learning cocktails. They will train you when you get to a bar, but really be flexible, be humble, learn, develop your skill set, develop that tool set of hospitality that you can draw from. Because and at the end of the day, what's going to make you the most money?
Yes, sir.
So that's what I would say. For the tools, obviously, shop.abarabove.com is where I would say. And we offer a lot of education. I think we have 8 different courses now.
Nice.
And there's a couple certification processes in there. I think.
What would you tell them to expect to learn from any of these courses?
Yeah, so we have like topics. A beginning bartender course. And it's not really about learning recipes, because like I said, you're going to learn the recipes when you get to your bar. What it really is about, the bartender fundamental course, is learning the behind the scenes stuff, like how to set your mise en place, how to set up your station, how to go through service, what to expect, and the finer points of service and hospitality to make you and the bar more money. So that is the basics of training that we recommend. So you're going to learn the basics, how to set your well, how to go through service, and how to make more money. Then you can go into the mixology certification if you really are looking for that lead bartender or bar manager role. And the philosophy that we have with many of the more specific courses like infusion, syrups, and bitters, for example, is we set the foundation, we show you the basics, we show you intermediate, what an evolution of that looks like, and then we get crazy. We show you what is possible when you start combining a lot of these elements together in a really advanced way. So we take you on the entire journey.
This is the 15-step process cocktail that
at
the tavern.
Right, and also how to break that down into a 3-step process, right? Yep. So that's kind of our philosophy is show you the basics, master the basics.
Yes, sir.
Show you what's next, and show you what's possible.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you, sir.
I appreciate
it.
Yeah.
Go check Chris out, guys. Go check out the tools, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace. If you made it this far, thank you so much for tuning back into the Nate Biltz podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Chris, and if you have not yet checked out A Bar Above, they have some of the best education and bartending equipment out there. Also, if you could do me one favor, if you received any value out of this episode, please take the time to like and subscribe to the show. My goal is to keep growing this podcast and bringing you the most creative and talented humans in the world. Pressing that like, subscribe, and just commenting will help me do just that. And this episode is brought to you by Brute Fitness Seltzers. Get your full serving of BCAAs with a caffeine boost for your workouts or simple daily routines. Just use code BILTZ20 for 20% off your next order. Thanks, y'all, and we'll see you in the next one.